My psycho friend lied to me about my online best friend, saying that they had died of lung cancer all of a sudden. But after 2 years of grieving, I finally found out the truth that no, they were not dead, but in fact, they've been alive the entire time. And now I feel completely overwhelmed and seriously at such a loss, because right now I just don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm going through something emotionally overwhelming and surreal right now, and I really just don't know how to process it. To start things out, I had an overseas friend that I've known ever since childhood. Even though we've never met in person and didn't always talk consistently, our bond ran deep. At some point, I also met online with one of his real-life friends through Discord, and we talked there, but not that much. My friend and I later went over to Instagram, and we weren't really talking as much during that time, but the friendship still felt deeply rooted and meaningful. But then my friend stopped responding. I had nowhere else to go to reach him, so I went back on Discord to go to his real-life friend and just figure out what happened. I then learned through his friend that he had lung cancer. Not only that, but he had also died. He described how leading up to his death things were difficult and how everybody had supported him on his last days. And here's the thing, there was never any indication that this was a joke or misunderstanding. He presented it as a fact. So for 2 years, I truly believed that my friend was gone. I was heartbroken that I never got to see him physically or even go to his funeral or know where his grave was. I genuinely wanted him to be at my wedding. I mourned him, I cried, I took time off of work because the grief was so heavy. He meant the world to me, and losing him, even if from far away, really shattered me. I sent him a final Discord message, a farewell of sorts, that said even if I never got the chance to hug him in real life, we will hug each other in the afterlife. Well, fast forward to today, and I found out that he's actually alive. I saw his Instagram feed update, and initially I thought his family members had logged on, but no, the images were too recent. I then instantly messaged him saying, "Wait, you're alive?" He then told me that he had no idea that I thought he was dead, and that he never had cancer. The only reason he stopped going on social media was because he was taking a mental health break, and he didn't know what his friend told me or why. We still don't know why the friend lied or what the motive could have been. My friend suggested that maybe his friend thought he was protecting him, but that doesn't make any sense. His friends knew who I was, and nothing about this was presented as a misunderstanding or a joke. He told me that he will definitely talk to his friend to figure out the reason why. So now I'm sitting here in this strange emotional limbo, where I'm obviously grateful that he's alive, of course, but I'm also trying to reconcile the fact that I grieved him for years, that I lived with this loss as if it were real, and now I suddenly learned that the reality I've been living with is not real at all. I genuinely don't know how to process this. It feels like emotional whiplash. Like, am I going crazy here? Am I overreacting? Because right now I don't know what to do. Okay, before we go any further, the original poster has an update they would like to share. Here's what they had to say. Okay, so I talked to my friend and he spoke to the other friend that lied to me. Here's what they had to say. Okay, so I asked if they remember the old times in the old Discord. They said yes, and I asked about if they remember your name and if it rang any bells. They said yes, and then I asked them about the message they sent. Well, they were very straightforward and said that yes, they did send that. They thought that you were a creep that contacted us whenever we were kids and that you were trying to get back at me because you couldn't get a hold of me. I explained my situations and I said that it wasn't okay to do what they did and that it wasn't fair for the other person to have to go through all that time thinking that I was dead or that I was battling a cancer I didn't have. They stated that they were just trying to protect me if you had something against me and tried to use it. I once again told them that it wasn't the right thing to do and it was not right to interfere like that. They kind of got offended and kept repeating that they were trying to keep me safe, but I redirected it and I asked them how they would feel if I did the same thing with our mutual friend. They then got silent and kind of didn't know how to react and just apologized sheepishly. Long story short, I think it will take a while until things get anywhere near normal ever again. I really don't understand his mind or how he went about it. Okay, yeah, sure, you try to protect me, but at least let me know. He didn't bring it up. He didn't talk about it. He didn't say a word this entire time. I mean, let me have a say in things, not just decide for me. Honestly, he was one of my closest friends and one that I grew up with. And this just made me look at our friendship in a different way. And I honestly don't know if we'll be back to normal anytime soon. So after my friend said that, my friend said that if this happened to him, he would be absolutely pissed. His friend didn't bring it up at all these years, just had us both living completely different realities and didn't think about the consequences for either of us. He had caused all this and had been silent for years as if nothing ever happened. I don't know where things go from here and neither does my friend. It's a lot for the both of us, but at least we're both in the same boat. We've just been honest with each other about everything that's been going on with our lives and rekindling our friendship that I thought was lost forever. And I have to admit, it will definitely feel really weird and probably still be weird for weeks and months at a time, but my friend said that he completely understands. He doesn't blame me and he wishes that he could erase my grief somehow. And I told him that's fine. I just wait to make more memories with him him because, man, I am glad that he's alive. Oh my god, I do not even know where to begin with this. Can you imagine for a second if some idiot said, oh yeah, your best friend online? Yeah, they died of lung cancer. Sorry about that, bro. And then for 2 years, you go through life thinking to yourself, oh man, my best friend is dead. What am I gonna do? Like, you literally go through the mourning process. You're so depressed, you're sad. You miss this friend and you're like, oh my gosh, I lost someone really great. Only to then find out one day, oh wait, they're alive and I was lied to. Like, dude, I would go crazy if that was me. Not only is this other friend a complete jerk, but holy crap, you don't do that to somebody. You don't lie and say, hey, this person died of lung cancer, even if you think they're some weirdo. Like, if that was the case, you would tell them off and be like, hey, get lost, leave my friend alone. You don't just lie to them about what's going on. That's insane behavior, dude. That's not okay. Like, I'm honestly really baffled by this one. I can't imagine going through that. So truly, to the original poster, I am so sorry that you went through that. Like, seriously, I would not be able to handle that. I would be so vengefully angry at this other person. Like, seriously, it would not even be funny. I would probably even go as far as like shaming them online and naming them and being like, dude, do you have any idea what this person did to me for 2 years? Yeah, they made me think my online best friend was dead. They straight up lied to me and said, oh, they died of lung cancer. Like, dude, what is going on right now? So hopefully you're able to find some kind of like solace and rekindle this friendship, because this is absolutely insane.
If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories.
My boyfriend forgot about my cat and forgot to feed her while I was away out of town. And now I'm honestly having a hard time forgiving him and forgetting about this situation, because this has kind of broken my trust and really disappointed me. And at this point, I just don't know what to do. Okay, so my boyfriend was supposed to feed my cat today and just completely forgot. I'm out of town with family for Thanksgiving, and when I asked him if he had seen her today, he told me sorry and that he got hyper-focused on a video game that he was making. He fed her yesterday, and my friends will go early tomorrow, so I'm not too worried about her well-being. She grazes her food and is used to just getting a can of wet food a day, but her dry food and water fountain should last her more than 24 hours. But if I'm being honest, I guess I'm just really disappointed in him. I tried to find other options to watch her, as he's not really a huge cat guy, and my friends were able to for most of the time I'm gone, so I only had to ask for his help for like 2 days. And I was really happy that he sent me a video of him playing with her yesterday, but for him to not have even stopped by to feed her today, it honestly makes me a little bit upset. I offered to contact a few other people to help out, all before I went out of town, but he insisted that he could do it. But now I'm wishing I had not even given him this responsibility. I'm having kind of a hard time sorting my feelings on the issue and figuring out if I should try to forgive him and forget, or if it's worth even letting him know how I feel, because I feel like my trust is broken and he really has disappointed me. What should I do? Okay, I gotta say that this really is a big red flag. Dude, if someone asked me to watch their pet, that would be the only thing on my mind. I would say to myself, okay, my entire life revolves around that animal. I don't care if it's a cat, a dog, a lizard, a fish, like whatever. I'm gonna rearrange my entire life to make sure that animal is happy. And that would be especially true for my girlfriend. Like, good lord. Like, there's no way I would ever forget to like make sure that cat is fed. Especially if I was in your boyfriend's shoes. Like, dude, this is unacceptable. And think about his excuse for a second. This guy was so caught up in making a video game that he was like, oops, sorry about that. I guess your friends will have to go early morning to make sure the cat's alive. And that for me is like all I would ever really need to know about your relationship with this guy, because his priorities are completely mixed around, man. He is not reliable, he can't keep your cat alive, and sure, the cat's probably fine, but for me, it's the principle of the matter. Like, if you have kids with this guy, is he gonna treat the kids like this? Oh, whoops, I forgot to feed them, I was making a video game. I don't know, I might be like overreaching here, but I think this is a good litmus test into like your future, in my opinion. So for me, this is a huge red flag, and this is absolutely something that I would not ignore. My girlfriend came back from a nearly 3-month trip abroad, and suddenly she's emotionally shut down and completely different. And right now, I honestly just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, so I flew down to Zanzibar to meet my girlfriend after she spent about 2.5 months on an exchange program. Before she left, we planned this trip together and we were both really excited. But ever since I arrived, she's been emotionally and physically distant in a way that I've never seen before. No kissing since the first night, no cuddling, no touching at all. She sleeps fully clothed with a pillow between between us, and during the day she doesn't initiate any physical affection, not even a light touch or a hug. She says that she's unsure about everything and seems overwhelmed or sad about her time abroad coming to an end. She made new friends there, and back home she didn't really have that many. I get that transitions can be rough, but it feels like she's shutting down completely when it comes to me. Being here together in the same hotel room until the 29th is mentally exhausting. I feel stuck in my own head, like she's holding all her thoughts in until we get home so she doesn't ruin the trip. I still love her and I want to be supportive, but I'm scared of coming across as clingy or making things worse. At the same time, pulling back feels like the beginning of the end. So has anyone been through something similar after long distance or after a partner returns from an intense experience abroad? How do you give someone space when you're sharing a room without completely disconnecting? And how do you protect your own mental health in the meantime? What should I do? Before we go any further, the original poster actually has an update. Here's what they had to say. Well, unfortunately, things ended today. She told me that she didn't want to keep me in emotional limbo anymore. She also said that she hasn't felt the need for physical closeness with me at all lately. No urge to cuddle, to kiss, or to sleep next to me, and that she doesn't want to pretend otherwise. She said that she wants to draw a line here and move forward on her own, that she feels the need to do her own thing, finds comfort being on her own, and wants time to figure out who she is after the 2.5 months abroad. Now this really hurts, especially because today is my last day here and I'm flying home alone. But at least I finally have some clarity instead of being stuck in uncertainty, even if it hurts and is incredibly heartbreaking. Okay, first off, this really sucks because from the sounds of it, and this is just my opinion, it kind of seems like your girlfriend may have cheated on you during this like 2.5 month exchange program, and she's now feeling guilty about it and wants to break up because of that. I literally have no other evidence to support this other than like, dude, she's acting super weird. So truly, I'm sorry that things didn't work out, but at least you can move forward and probably find like a better girlfriend than this, because I know for a fact if I came back from a 2.5 month like exchange program, I would be jumping for joy to see my girlfriend, and chances are I would have already been telling her all about it and like counting down the days to see her again. I wouldn't come back and be like, no, don't touch me, don't cuddle with me or even kiss me, I can't stand it. And I definitely wouldn't break up because it's like, dude, why? That just literally doesn't make any sense, and it kind of leads me to believe that yeah, she did something she regrets, and instead of like talking to you about it, she would rather break up and move on with her life instead of like facing it and owning up to it. My roommate doesn't work and instead stays home all day, driving up my bills that I have to pay for and honestly just causing me a lot of problems. So now I told him that he needs to move out by March of next year because at this point I'm honestly at the end of my rope and I just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. I'm 28 years old, I'm living in Brussels, and earlier this year I rented a 2-bedroom apartment. I wanted to help her brother out because finding housing here is basically a competitive sport. So I decided to rent the second room to a brother I knew through the African community here. He's 37 years old and told me that he had graduated from a Belgian university and was working full time. So I thought to myself, perfect. And honestly, I don't ask for much. Rent just needs to be paid on time and ideally no criminal activity. Well, about a month in, I noticed something odd. Every morning at 5 o'clock, he wakes up, eats some food, and then returns to his room. I assumed that he had some kind of like early job shift until I realized that he was also home when I returned from work. So I finally asked whether he worked from home or not. And that's when he casually mentioned that he has actually been on sick leave for 2 years. And trust me, this is some new information. Now, the issue isn't his age or his situation. The real challenge is everything else. For example, the reason he wakes up at 5 o'clock in the morning is because he starts his day by watching far-right YouTube channels and alpha male motivational content at a volume that could probably wake the entire building. My alarm clock has not seen the light of day in months. His YouTube history wakes me up instead. Another issue is that almost every conversation we have includes him making negative comments about immigrants. This would be strange under any circumstances, but it's especially baffling considering he is also an immigrant. Sometimes I feel like I'm living with a man who forgot his own biography, but this especially hurts me because I'm also an immigrant. Meanwhile, he's home basically all day, which means our water and electricity usage has doubled while I'm almost never home. I leave at 7 o'clock in the morning for work and then training or coaching the kids at my club, and I usually return at around 9 o'clock, and on the weekend I'm usually at a game or with my friends. So I'm basically paying the bills of a man who uses the apartment like a full-time office, as well as a gym, a spa, and political media center. I've tried discussing these issues with him, but he takes any attempt at communication as a personal attack. You can't bring up anything without him becoming defensive. Eventually, I even canceled the shared TV subscription because he monopolized the living room. So now I watch games in my room like a quiet, defeated bachelor. So I finally told him, look, you need to move out by March. And now I'm wondering, am I overreacting for wanting a peaceful home, manageable bills, and maybe one morning where I'm not woken up by someone lecturing me on how to be an alpha male? Because right now I really don't know what to do. Okay, holy crap. First off, you're saying this guy's gotta be out by March? How about he's gotta be out by the end of the month? Like, this is some crazy stuff going on. I would not wait 4 more months just to make sure this guy's out the door. Like, think about it for a second. This guy not only lied to you about having a job, but he's also making no attempt at employment at all. He's driving up the bills at your expense and generally just not a very good roommate. So if I was in your shoes, I would be like, okay, you've got like 30 days to get out and you've got to figure something else out. Because the way he's acting, in my opinion, is just a big red flag. Like, I don't know about you, but I would not want to deal with that for a second. Because having a bad roommate, in my opinion, will ruin your living experience entirely. Especially one that's not willing to carry their own weight, which in this case, it kind of seems like that's really what's happening here. My sister and her husband are constantly trying to invite me to celebrate Christmas with their family. But despite the fact that they know I do not want to celebrate Christmas and I don't like the holiday in general, they still are so persistent that it's now driving me crazy and I just don't know what to do about it. Here's what's happening. I'm a 30-year-old male and I decided a few years ago that I don't want to celebrate Christmas anymore. Christmas was a very unpleasant time for me and my sister as kids. My severely bipolar single father usually had violent manic episodes around this time of year, and it was honestly traumatic for the both of us. My older sister and I are both estranged from our father now. My sister's happily married to my awesome brother-in-law, and they have given me 2 wonderful nephews, ages 7 and 2. We're all very close, and even though we live a few hours apart, I still drive to go see them a couple of times a month and babysit whenever they need me to. My brother-in-law had a very different upbringing than my sister and I. He came from a very loving, stable, somewhat wealthy household, and they always have lavish Christmas vacations. And honestly, I love that for them. My sister deserves to have good Christmases where she can just spoil her children, especially after what we went through. However, I have no interest in traveling out of state or out of country sometimes, just to celebrate a holiday that still upsets me. If they want to do Christmas at their house, fine. I can drive a few hours and hang out with my nephews and in-laws. That is absolutely no problem. I love them all unconditionally. However, on the years they decide to travel, like this year, I am not interested in joining them, which honestly leads us to the issue at hand. No matter how many times I say no thank you to their invites, I am completely ignored. My sister's asked multiple times, so is my brother-in-law, and I always decline politely because I know they're just trying to make me feel welcome. Although I do get the sense that they pity me because I am single and have no other family. But then last week, my sister called me and said to me, hey, I've got someone here who wants to talk to you. And honestly, I would have assumed that she was going to put on one of my nephews on the phone, but in fact, it was my brother-in-law's mom instead. His mom then proceeded to try and double down to try and convince me to attend their Christmas party 3 states away. She said something like, your sister tells me that you're going to be all alone for Christmas. That sounds so sad. You really have to come with us. You know we love you. I was basically put in an awkward position because my brother-in-law's mom is so sweet. But you know what? I stood my ground. I thanked her and I said no thank you again. She tried to cajole me a little, but she got the hint and we just awkwardly hung up. I am so livid at my sister, but I haven't said anything to her about it. I just don't understand why she can't take a simple no as an answer, and furthermore has to get her in-laws involved to guilt trip me into celebrating a holiday that makes me sad. I'm also mad that my sister gave her the impression that I'm all sad and alone on Christmas, as if I need to be safe from it. I got over it and I went to my sister's house for Thanksgiving, and it was very low-key and it was just kind of like a lovely gathering. I played with my nephews, I got a little tipsy with my sister, I smoked a turkey with my brother-in-law over beers, and overall I had a great time. But as I was leaving the following afternoon, my brother-in-law halted me at the door and once again pleaded with me to join them for Christmas. I was nice as I declined once again, but I'm not ashamed to admit that I was boiling inside, and I'm honestly so sick of this. It's the same thing every year. They know that I'm not celebrating Christmas anymore, and yet they still force the issue and then try to make me feel guilty about it. But I'm a grown adult. I don't have to celebrate it if I don't want to. Like, seriously, leave me alone. Like, am I being a jerk about this? I don't think that I am, but I don't think they're necessarily being jerks either. They're just trying to include me. I love them and we have a great relationship, but I'm so tired of my wants being ignored about celebrating Christmas every single year. I'm starting to think that I really need to lay it down and firmly tell them that if I say no, then they need to respect it. But I also feel like it would cause unneeded family drama. But I really am so stressed out about it every time they ask. In the past, I've just let it slide, but it's really starting to upset me. So how can I be both clear and direct about this without my sister being mad and my brother-in-law and his family acting like I'm some lonely loser who needs to be saved? What should I do? Okay, honestly, this sounds like a sister issue more than like a brother-in-law or like an extended family issue. If I was in your shoes, I would talk to my sister immediately and be like, dude, stop it. Why are you telling people that I'm lonely and sad on Christmas? That is not the case, and it's really annoying. I wouldn't necessarily take this out on like the brother-in-law or like any kind of in-laws on that side of things, because they're probably just being fed misinformation, and that's not fair for you at all. So in my opinion, I would go right to my sister and I would tell her to cut it out. I would say, hey, I don't like celebrating Christmas. Please stop trying to invite me to everything. It makes me uncomfortable and I don't like the way I'm being treated. And hopefully that'll get the message across, because the way she's acting, in my opinion, is really annoying.
An entitled jerk and his family make my life as a server a living nightmare, as he nitpicks and complains about everything in front of him, claiming that all of their food is wrong and that everything's cold. Things got so bad that this guy was practically chasing me around the restaurant as I was desperately trying to find a manager to resolve this issue, and I'm honestly still blown away by this guy's entitlement. Here's what happened. So I've been a server for several years here, and just when I thought I had seen it all, this happens to me. And before I begin, here's some necessary background that is important to me. First of all, I work in a high-end steakhouse with casual fine dining. Secondly, I'm a very small woman, and I'm very non-confrontational. Now, to begin this story, tonight I took a 14 top of trash. Literally, I'm talking the white tank top, the fake chain, the backwards hat and saggy pants, all being married to a Karen, with 5 older kids who were complete utter brats, and had kids of their own on the way who were also total brats, and then the grandparents, who could only whisper when ordering their food, but then could magically speak up to yell at you when they don't like something. Now, from the very start, they were awful. I knew from the beginning by how they were acting that I was putting gratuity on this table. They were nitpicking everything, such as them being upset that we had run out of tomatoes for their salad. I go to take their food order after I ask if they're ready, and after standing there for 2 minutes with the first person, after they said yes, I told them I'd be right back and went to take care of the other 5 tables. I then go back and they order, and there's no problems here so far. The food gets ready and I have to make 2 trips, and when I'm running the second batch of food out, this is where problems begin. I'm carrying a full tray of food, and the man in the tank top starts yelling at me. He says to me, "Take all the food back, it's cold. My skillet is ice cold." Now, I kindly explain the skillets aren't supposed to be hot, and for the record, they're not. It's only just for show, and they only get hot if we leave them in the window too long. Well, he gets even madder at my explanation. He says to me, "You may as well just take all the food back, it's all cold." Now, I remained polite the entire time. I said to him, "Well, let's let everybody else try their meals, and if they're cold, I can fix them." He then looks at me and says, "Are you calling me a liar?" Now, I didn't even have a second to respond before this guy starts popping off at me and demanding to speak to a manager. I just say okay after I drop off the last plates. I start walking across the restaurant towards the bar where my manager is, and Tank Top Man gets up and starts trotting after me. And I mean, this guy is right on my tail. I feel so angry and just so uncomfortable. Luckily, we have a server-side station room where customers aren't allowed, and I can use it to cut through to get my manager without him following me. I pop out the other side, and my manager isn't there. The guy sees me pop out on the other side and starts heading towards me again. And at this point, I'm freaking out. I'm practically jogging to the host, and I tell him that I need Linda or Joe right now. The host sees the guy, sees my state, and I think that he gets it. So we split off, and we're both frantically looking for either one. I managed to almost lose the guy when I find Linda, but he's only about 25 feet behind me. Words come pouring out of my mouth trying to explain quickly, but this guy comes stomping up, and he just pushes right past me in the direction of my table. He follows her, and she totally ignores him and whatever he's saying to her. I decide to stay many feet back, and I watch her deal with my messed up table from a distance. Now, I couldn't hear exactly what was said, but this is how it went from what she told me. She said that she just about punched one of them in the mouth, and it wasn't the tank top man who she got to calm down, but instead it was his mom that was popping off at her. And the other manager was going to finish off the table, but I would still get the gratuity, which was about 18%. In the end, only one steak got taken off, which they were very upset about, and I was instructed to stay out of their sight because apparently I had caused them such disdain. The manager takes over, and I don't have to deal with them any longer. And the funniest thing is that after they left, I was cleaning up their table and I find a budgeting list with names, prices of things, how much they had to spend, and all this other stuff. I mean, these people had nothing left and they were hoping for a free meal. But hey, I'm gonna keep that list, I'm not gonna lie. And I'm also tempted to look their names up on Facebook just so I can laugh at them once again. Wow, that sounds like an awful table to deal with. They were immediately confrontational, and I bet they acted that way just so they could get a free meal. Like, if you really think about it, it kind of makes sense. Like, this guy was literally chasing you around the restaurant. He was all over you when you're trying to find a manager to meet his stupid demands. That is really crazy behavior, and I'm so sorry that you had to deal with that. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not wanting my stepbrother to come along with me to my birthday party that I was having exclusively with my dad? Because right now, my mom and stepdad are calling me a jerk for saying no, and at this point, I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 15-year-old male and my parents are divorced, and I have a stepbrother and 2 stepsisters. My stepbrother is 13 years old and my stepsisters are 10 and 9 years old. Last year, I chose to stay mostly with my dad and see my mom every other weekend versus the every other week schedule that we had before. I prefer living with my dad. My relationship with my mom isn't close, and I don't like her husband or his son, so it was a no-brainer who I would be with more once I was old enough to decide. My mom blames my dad. She blames him for everything wrong in our relationship and the relationship with her husband and stepson. Her blaming my dad for everything is kind of why our relationship ended up this way. When I was younger and they were still married, she chose to stay away from school plays and stuff like that, especially if dad was taking time off work to be there, because she didn't want to be there with him because their marriage sucked. And when I asked her to come, she would tell me it was a choice between her and my dad. My parents fought about that too, and my dad called her childish and told her to put me first. It was easier when they divorced because they fought way less. Now, my mom isn't that warm either. She's fine, but not really the kind of parent you could seek comfort from. She has a really short temper and she dated a lot after she and my dad filed for divorce. And she introduced me to a bunch of random guys and tried to make me like them more than my own dad. When she got married to her husband, she made a big deal out of me needing to spend time with his kids and putting the expectation on me to give her time with her husband. Then her stepson wanted to come with me to my dad's place, and he was really trying to be my brother and would honestly get so annoying. Then my mom would annoy me because she said I should include him more. Her husband would get mad at me and say I should stay with them more since his son wanted a brother, and he told me his son could come with me to my dad on some weekends, especially if I insisted on seeing my dad. It was extra awful when my dad would take me on vacations and my stepbrother would beg to go with us and I would just say no. My mom would tell me to ask my dad and I would say no as well. She'd tell me that I was a brother whether I wanted to be or not, and I would include my sibling who wanted to go. I told her she can pay for a vacation between all of us, but I wasn't letting her stepson intrude when I was with my dad. My birthdays were always a nightmare too, because I had 2 birthdays and dad always did something fun with me and my friends. And this year is no exception, and he's taking us someplace really awesome. But it's a place my stepbrother has wanted to go for years, and when my dad gave my mom a heads up about it, as he has to do that when he takes me out of state, just like she has to do, she told her stepson and now he wants to come along. But here's the thing, I really don't want him there. My mom told me to not be a jerk, stating that they can't afford to take the family there. But I told her it wasn't my problem. Her stepson even tracked me down at school and begged me to go, but I told him no. My mom and her husband told me that I was being a jerk for doing this. So honestly, am I in the wrong in this situation? Because right now I'm really frustrated and I seriously don't know what to do. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. I think you're just trying to spend time with your dad and enjoy some semblance of privacy away from your obnoxious stepbrother. Like, why on earth would your dad even want your stepbrother to come with you? Like, if I was the dad in this scenario, I would want to have just my son with me so we can have a good time for their birthday. I wouldn't want this other kid with me that I don't know and have no claim to. And it's pretty clear that the stepbrother is being obnoxious. So the fact that your mom and your stepdad are just turning a blind eye to that, in my opinion, is so uncalled for. So no, you are not the jerk. You get 2 birthdays and you're spending this one with your dad. And in my opinion, it doesn't matter where you're going. If you don't want your stepbrother with you, then honestly, that is the end of the discussion. My wife's entitled aunt demands that we move out of my mother-in-law's house, claiming that we haven't earned that house and that my mother-in-law would do better just to sell it and keep the money. And despite the fact that we invested years into fixing up and cleaning up this house, me and my wife are left incredibly angry and very infuriated. And at this point, we seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So for a little bit of background, my in-laws divorced the same time my wife and I got married. They were not rich, but owned a company and were well off. Their house was a small rambler on an acre of land in a pretty nice area. When they split, my mother-in-law got the house. She ended up falling into a slump of online buying and turned the house into a hoarder situation. Come 2 years later, and she had a massive stroke and needs to have living assistance. My wife and I spent a full year of all our free time cleaning up the house and property. We even fill an industrial dumpster with garbage and hold multiple estate sales. We went through the usual arguments, where she would not want us to sell any of her china because it was her favorite piece, or she didn't want us to sell her stuff without her permission, since she claimed some of her stuff was worth thousands of dollars possibly. Now, after selling nearly everything she had, most of which she didn't even know she had, we only ended up with about $10,000. And this all went towards her medical bills, since of course she didn't think she needed insurance prior to the stroke, because according to her, insurance is a scam. Well, the house is actually pretty nice. We pay out of pocket ourselves to finish the remodel she started a decade ago and realize that we really like it. We are in our early 30s, and even with no kids, we have no shot we can afford a house this nice on this much land anytime soon. The market says the house is worth $850,000, and my mother-in-law wants to sell it, but it's completely paid off. My wife convinced her to let us rent to own from her and change the will so we could get it in the end, and we would just have to buy my wife's sister out of whatever's left on the cost. And honestly, that's a good deal in my opinion. Well, fast forward 2 years and we call this house our own. We take care of it, we work on it, we literally do everything. The yard and house look nicer than they have in 20 years. My mother-in-law is slowly recovering from her stroke, but she still can't walk or do much on her own, and yet even still, her sister appears. She is insisting my mother-in-law evict us and sell the house, that she should use the money to live somewhere nicer. Apparently, her reasoning is that we didn't earn a house that nice, and that we're just squatting in her house. She also said that she's getting better, so she might want to live there again, or could at least use the money. Now, this is a 2,000 square foot rambler, and we are paying $2,000 a month towards the house and essentially her medical bills. And we are taking care of her every single week. And yet this entitled aunt's first thought is to evict us and take it back for their own gain. And it's honestly all so infuriating. Yeah, your aunt is completely out of line. What is she talking about? You guys didn't earn a house. You absolutely earned that house. You paid for everything. You fixed it up for what, 2 years? And you're literally taking care of it every single day. Like, in my opinion, you absolutely earned that house. Also, what has this aunt done to help out her sister? Like, she has very clearly been sitting on the sidelines watching all this go down, and only once this house is like up to standards and has some kind of like relevance again, is she like, oh yeah, you should sell it and evict them. They haven't earned any of this. But in reality, she hasn't earned any of this. She's sitting there trying to be like, oh yeah, they don't deserve this. But like, what have you done for the house? All of this just sounds really infuriating, and I completely understand where you're coming from, because your wife's aunt sounds like an absolute piece of garbage. And in my opinion, she does not deserve anything she's trying to claim. My entitled parents have treated me poorly my entire life, never showing me any kind of love, appreciation, or credit for the things that I do. And now that I have a family of my own, I'm making a promise to never treat my kids the way that my mom treated me growing up, because honestly, it is all just so disappointing. Here's what happened. So I'm a 39-year-old female, and I am one of 3 kids, and have been treated poorly my entire life by my awful parents. One of my siblings is treated so differently than the other 2 that it's almost a joke when the phone rings when I'm there and my sibling is calling. If I call my mom, you can tell that she's typically doing something while talking to me, and I might get 5 minutes with her. But if I happen to be at her house and the sibling calls, everything stops. Her voice inflection changes, and you would think the most important person in the world called. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm right here, mom. It's been like this my whole life. I paid my way through college and even had to pay back a loan to the very last cent for some things that I couldn't afford for my wedding. In contrast, my sibling not only had a fully paid for wedding ceremony at a posh venue, but also had a completely separate lavish reception months later that I'm sure cost in the upper tens of thousands of dollars. I've never been given any credit for being the first to graduate college in my family, being financially independent, raising a great family, or just generally being a decent member of society. My sibling is completely codependent, and if something happens, my mom will drop everything and go tend to them, even though they are married and should be able to provide for themselves. Every year they put on a big event for the family, and I happen to be there and just mention how tired and busy I've been because I put in 10 to 12-hour days working and raising multiple children. Most days, my parents never leave the house, watching 24/7 cable news and scrolling social media, and all I get from them is a scoff as they say, "You're tired? We do so much more than you." I mean, it's almost comical at this point. Fortunately, my husband and I are very aware of the tendencies that we see, and we are open with our children about how we will never be that way, and they have every right to call us even if we are. I just thought I was unlucky. I had no idea this was a generational issue. The best part is that they always talk about how wonderful the good old days were, and I'm like, why don't you get out there and make some new memories? But you know what? Whatever. Because at least now I know what I don't want to be in 20 years. Wow, that really sucks for the original poster. I'm so sorry that they clearly have chosen favorites, and it seems like nothing you ever do is going to be good enough for these people. But I think the one silver lining here that I think you can hopefully hold on to is the fact that you recognize exactly the way they're treating you, and you know firsthand that what they're doing is very wrong. So hopefully you can be a better mom than your mom has ever been to you, because from the sounds of it, it doesn't seem like she was very attentive in the slightest. Am I the jerk for returning gifts my family gave to my newborn daughter after they said they hate my daughter's name, and that because I broke a family tradition, they will never accept my daughter? Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm a 26-year-old female, and I gave birth to my first child 3 weeks ago. And trust me, my family is not happy with the name I chose for my daughter. My parents and siblings had wanted me to name my daughter Agatha or Agnes because those are family names, and it's part of a theme that my family keeps, where the oldest girl and the youngest girl pass the initials of their name to their children, and because my name also begins with an A, they wanted me to do this as the youngest. My oldest sister followed the tradition, my mother's oldest and youngest sisters did it, my cousins even did it, but my husband and I did not want to follow the tradition, and we didn't want a classic name for our baby anyways. We chose the name Indy for our daughter, and I had told my family during my pregnancy that I was not using the name Agatha or Agnes or any name starting with the letter A for my baby. In fact, I told them that more than once, but for some reason they decided that Agatha would be the name. When my daughter was born and my family came to visit us at the hospital, they were all shocked by the name that we chose. They asked me what I was thinking going for a name like that, and then told me I had broken the tradition for some weird name that doesn't make sense. My husband asked them to leave the hospital if they couldn't keep their opinions to themselves. They eventually apologized, which I believed was sincere, and they came to our house with gifts. But when I saw the gifts, I noticed anything personalized had the name Agatha on it. And when I asked about it, they told me Agatha was a much better name. And surely I didn't want my daughter to have a dumb modern name like Indy. My mom told me she could not understand me picking such a hideous name, and she said my husband and most of my friends had set bad examples with their names, but I should stick to classics because they are classic for a reason. She told me they would never be able to accept the name Indy in the family. Well, I returned all the gifts to their packaging, and I returned them to my family before asking them to leave. I told them they did not get to insult my daughter's name again and push so hard for us to change the name that we as parents had decided on. My recovery from surgery has been slow, so my husband was the one to make sure they actually left, but they were upset that I was responding to them like I was. They told me I should have been more honest about the name earlier, and I was punishing them for thinking more of my daughter than my husband and I were. Now, I do feel bad for returning the gifts and kicking them out, and the number of text messages that they have sent me since then basically tell me that they didn't like it either. So I'm honestly wondering if I'm the jerk, because at this point, I really don't know what to do. Okay, I want to say first and foremost that I think family traditions like this are really dumb. Like seriously, just let people name their kids whatever they want. It is so dumb when families do stuff like this, where they freak out just because you picked a different name for your child. And for them to double down and be like, we won't accept the name that you gave your child. Like, what is wrong with these people? That is so insulting. And you know what? If I was in your situation like right now, and they said that to me and gave me gifts with the name Agatha on it, I would have done the same thing that you did. I would have taken the gifts and given it right back to them. Like, there's no way you're gonna come into my house and act like that. So no, you're definitely not the jerk. And if they don't like the fact that you stood up for yourself, then that's something that they have to deal with, not you. My entitled manager freaks out on me when she sees me sitting down at the cash register, stating that if I refuse to work, then I should just sit at the register and she would do everything. So I decided to maliciously comply by proving to her how ridiculous she was being in this moment. Here's what happened. Okay, so I work part-time in a small convenience store, and it's just me and the boss lady. I'm usually there so she can do paperwork in the back and order supplies. So while I'm on the cash register, I have to keep everything in front stocked up, keep the returned drink bottles and cans neatly organized, etc. It is honestly pretty steadily busy. Well, every now and then, she likes to freak out and start complaining about something. And yesterday, she came out to find me sitting at the cash register. I had just made sure everything was completely restocked. I had been regularly running into the back and grabbing things and refilling stuff, but she chose to freak out and accuse me of not doing any work. And since I apparently didn't want to work, I should just sit there at the register and she would do everything. Now, at first, I thought she was joking, and I laughed as I got up to do something, but she suddenly got really mean and got in my face and said to just sit down and she would do everything. So you know what? That's exactly what I did. I started telling her everything I was about to do, and she actually just started doing it. I was just sitting at the register and smiling. So she looked at me and said, "Oh, it must be nice to sit there at the register and not have to do anything." So I happily said back to her, "You bet it is. Thank you so much." And in the end, she just glared at me as she went back to her office. Wow, that job sounds like it sucks. This lady clearly was looking for someone to blame about something, and you just happen to be the one person she can pick on at the moment. And it's so ironic that she came around right after you got done doing something else in the store. Like you weren't just sitting there doing nothing. You were out working. You were getting stuff done, getting things restocked. And I know when I've worked like customer service and I've had managers similar to the one you've dealt with, they always show up right when you're about to sit down and then try to act like, "Oh, you haven't done anything today. Everything looks so neat and clean." And you want to say, "Yeah, well, everything's in order because of me." So I personally find this malicious compliance hilarious. And honestly, if I was in your shoes, I would do the same thing. But I also would definitely be looking for another job because this lady sounds like she is miserable to work for. My entitled mother nearly ruins my expensive trip to New York City as she said she would book my flight for me as a gift. But instead of actually following through with that, she instead put this off for far too long, leaving me with no choice but to book the flight myself. And in the end, she called me ungrateful, despite the fact that she almost ruined everything. And to this day, this situation honestly still makes me mad. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened to me about 2 years ago, but it still enrages me whenever I think about it. Before the pandemic started, I bought tickets to go see Rage Against the Machine at Madison Square Garden in New York City. I live in Los Angeles, so I planned a whole week-long trip to New York City around this concert. And unfortunately, the concert was postponed twice due to COVID. When the concert's rescheduled date was finally solid, I decided to book my flight. I was talking about the trip on the phone with my entitled mother, and she insisted on booking my flight for me as a gift. I was meeting friends in New York City, and we spent a full evening on the phone booking restaurants, museum tickets, show tickets, and several other things. And I found the perfect flight that would get me there in time for everything. And they only had 2 tickets left. So I called my mom and I told her I wanted this particular flight. She said okay and to send her the flight information, and she would book it for me. I sent a link to the flight, I sent screenshots and all this other stuff, and I made it super easy for her to book. I told her it was absolutely imperative that I get this particular flight as my friends and I had things planned, and she insisted that she would book it. Now, for reference, I live in a different time zone than her, and when I woke up the next morning, I did not see a flight confirmation email in my inbox. So I called her up. She answered the phone sounding very annoyed that she was in her doctor's waiting room for a routine checkup, and she started whisper yelling at me, "What do you want?" And it was then that I just decided to call her back. Well, 5:00 p.m. rolls around, and I still don't have a flight confirmation email, so I called her again, and she again picked up incredibly angry with me, yelling at me that she was in Costco and why in the world do I keep calling her. I told her that she promised to book a flight for me and that there were only 2 seats left almost 24 hours ago, and that it was absolutely essential that I get on this flight. Well, she told me, "Oh, just forget it, I'll do it later." When she said that, I got very mad, and I was like, "What are you talking about? There were only 2 seats left last night." She then started screaming into the phone at me. She said to me, "You're getting a free flight, so you could just shut up and I'll book the flight whenever I feel like it. You need to be more grateful that I'm even offering to do this favor." And then after that, she hung up the phone on me. So she basically left me no choice but to book the flight myself and get the last seat possible. She called me when she got home from Costco and kept yelling about how I was ungrateful, but I told her that she had done nothing to be grateful for except almost ruin my trip. I mean, why would I be grateful for that? And here's the thing, she wanted to use points and not money to pay for the flight. And before anyone says anything, I don't need my mom to book me a flight. I'm a 40-year-old female email, and she offered to book the flight. I didn't ask her or beg her. If she said she was going to book the flight for me, why would I not take her at her word and believe that she was going to do it that night? It's honestly so frustrating, and even to this day, it still upsets me. Wow, that honestly is so enraging. Here you are trying to get your plans ready for you and your friends, and you thought in good faith your mom was going to book this flight for you as some kind of like good favor. And I literally don't think you could have made this any easier. You sent her a link to the flight, you sent screenshots, you literally sent everything to this lady, and somehow she didn't understand how crucial and like time sensitive this was. And I'm kind of convinced that she probably would have never booked the flight, but instead tried to shop around for something cheaper and made you change your plans instead of just buying the flight that you were looking for. Like at that point, I don't blame you for just buying your own ticket. So honestly, it really sounds like your mom was awful in this situation, and hopefully you don't have to deal with anything like that ever again. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My best friend is upset that I got engaged before she did, all because her boyfriend of 5 years simply won't do it. And now I'm sensing a lot of resentment and jealousy from my best friend. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so for some backstory, my best friend has been with her boyfriend for 4.5 years, and she has been begging him to propose. She even set a deadline last year that if he doesn't propose before Christmas, she will leave him. Well, he didn't propose, and she is still dropping passive-aggressive remarks at him from time to time about it. And I have tried to help. I took her to get measurements a year ago because her boyfriend said that he won't buy one if he doesn't know her size and all this other garbage. Well, my boyfriend proposed 2 weeks ago, and that's after 2 years of being together and 1.5 years of living together. I said yes, and I've been so happy. And when I told my friends, they were also so happy for me. A few even cried, and they were asking for every single detail. But when it came to my best friend, I decided to tell her over dinner. We met up and I showed her the ring, and she didn't even try to be fake happy with me. She just said to me, "You guys are rushing. I mean, I don't think about stuff like that now. My man and I will buy rings together and announce our engagement next month." She gave me no congratulations, no nothing. I felt embarrassed and tried to change the subject to lighten the mood because I still want to hang out with my best friend. Eventually, she barely talked. I gave up, and it was so awkward. We eventually went home after just an hour. And right now, I'm honestly so hurt. I know she's hurting too, but to act like this feels so immature. Would it be a bad idea to text her and tell her this and talk it out? I mean, how can I even fix this? What should I do? Okay, first and foremost, it is really bad that your friend is acting this way. Like, just because you're getting engaged doesn't mean that somehow this is some kind of shot at her. Like, you really can live your own life and have your own things going on. Just because her boyfriend won't propose to her after what, 5 years? Like, that literally is not your fault or your problem. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would probably put some distance between me and this friend. Like, she is clearly very jealous of you and the fact that you're getting married before her, so she feels the need to try and like one-up you in some way to feel good about herself again. And she probably feels like she's losing her mind in this relationship too. She's waited 5 years to get married. Meanwhile, her best friend is getting married way sooner than her. And you've been with your boyfriend for much less time. Also, if we want to look at this seriously, it doesn't sound like she's very serious about getting married either, or even about this relationship in the slightest. Like, didn't she give some kind of ultimatum to her boyfriend and basically say that if we don't get engaged by Christmas, then she's gonna break up with him? Because last I checked, she's still with him and Christmas definitely passed. So it really sounds like she's got her own problems to figure out. So honestly, in my opinion, I don't think you did anything wrong, and I think some time and distance might be the best thing in this scenario, because your friend is clearly jealous of you, and hopefully she can come back around and figure out exactly what she wants. Am I the jerk for giving my son's room to my grandchild? Because right now, my son is freaking out, claiming that we're trying to erase him from the family by giving his room over to my grandchild. And at this point, I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm a 56-year-old woman, and I have 3 children. We'll call them Brad, Emma, and Sophia. Those are not their real names. Brad, who's 32 years old, lives about 4 hours away. Emma, who's 29, just recently moved back home. And Sophia, who's 23, still lives with my husband and I. Emma was engaged, and the relationship became awful, so we urged her to stay with us for a while for both safety reasons and financial reasons. She's also 32 weeks pregnant with our first child, which will also be our first grandchild. She does work hard, but took a financial hit when her relationship ended, and home prices are insanely high here. We have a nice size 4-bedroom home that we've owned since the kids were
were little. All three of our kids had their own bedrooms, and Brad's room is currently vacant except for the few times a year that he visits. Brad moved out about 3 years ago and did not at all take care of his room. I had to do a lengthy cleanup when he moved out, and the room has been needing to be redone for quite a while. I told Emma that I would happily help her renovate Brad's room for the baby, and the baby will be sleeping in her room the first few months anyways, but the nursery will give her a dedicated space to keep the baby's things and a place for the baby to sleep once the bassinet is outgrown. The only caveat was that the room needs to have a bed for Brad's visits. When he comes home, he can either stay in his old room and the baby can be in a pack and play with Emma, or Emma can stay in the baby's room and Brad can stay in hers. It's not ideal, but it's the best option for Emma at this time, and it's something that we can make work. I was telling Brad about the plans to renovate his room into a nursery, and he just completely freaked out. He said that I should have asked him and not told him. He feels that I'm trying to erase him from the family and that I'd rather have the baby than him. He said he's not going to visit anymore or come home for holidays because he won't feel welcome. He feels his sister was irresponsible to get pregnant and that she is not owed his childhood bedroom for her child. He feels it has sentimental value, and I'm just getting rid of that without second thought. But I disagree with him wholeheartedly. I love all of my kids and my unborn grandchild, and I'm just trying to do right by all of them with the resources that I have. He comes home very few times a year, maybe less than 10 nights per year, and to me, it just doesn't make sense to have a vacant room when we could really use that space for a baby. So am I the jerk for just giving away his childhood bedroom? Because at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. No, you are definitely not the jerk. Brad does not live there anymore. He literally lives 4 hours away. Does he really expect you to keep his room as it is? Especially now that he's 32 years old and he moved out? Like, that's insane to me. Plus, it sounds like his sister really is in need of help. Like, unless he's renting that room out for some reason, in my opinion, I think you're well within your right to clean it out and use it for whatever you want. He is overreacting and trying to shift the blame onto Emma. Meanwhile, he's missing the fact that Emma was in an awful relationship. Like, not just verbally, but physically as well. She literally moved back home for safety. Like, how selfish can you possibly get? Like, come on. So no, you're definitely not the jerk. Brad is overreacting, and in my opinion, I think you're well within your rights to change that room as you see fit. Am I the jerk for not wearing the wedding dress my stepsister handmade for me, since she made something that I definitely did not agree upon, and the sizing was completely wrong? Because right now, my dad and my stepmom are furious with me, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I'm a 25-year-old female, and I got married 2 weeks ago. My now husband and I paid for most of the wedding, but my father covered a few costs for us. My father's girlfriend, who we will call Stella, has a daughter by the name of Zoe, who is finishing her degree in fashion. She wants to get into the wedding dress industry once she graduates, and when I started planning my wedding, she offered to design and make my dress. Now, I was hesitant at first, as I'd been excited about picking out my own dress, but I agreed because I didn't know Zoe that well, as my father had only been dating her mother for about 2 years, and I thought this could be a nice opportunity to bond. Also, I'd seen some of her work, where she had made a couple of ball gowns in college, and she seemed honestly good. We met up a few times to discuss our ideas. During those times, I realized that our styles were drastically different, but we still managed to agree on a design. I gave Zoe my measurements and asked her to update me. Well, she didn't. Whenever I asked her how she was doing, she would say that she was going to send me progress pictures when she got home, but she never did. It took her longer than expected to finish it, and I didn't even get the dress until a month before my wedding. And let me tell you something, it looked nothing like the design we had agreed upon. It was the wrong color, the wrong style, the wrong everything. It looked exactly like the type of dress Zoe would want to wear, but I knew I'd never wear anything like it. I really did not like that dress. When I tried it on, I found out it was also 3 sizes too big. And though I knew I could probably have it altered, I truly did not want to wear that dress on my wedding day. So I called Zoe and I told her I wouldn't be wearing the dress. I said that it looked lovely, but it is not the style that we agreed upon, and I thought it would be best for me to find a different dress. I offered to pay for her work, even though she was making the dress for free, but she declined and then just hung up on me. So I went to a rental bridal store with my maid of honor, and we found a beautiful gown that didn't need much altering, and it looked exactly like I wanted. Fast forward to my wedding, and I walked down the aisle in the dress that I bought. Zoe seemed to be on the verge of tears during the ceremony, and Stella gave me dirty looks all throughout the reception. When I approached them a while later, they were both really short with me. My father, Stella, and Zoe left less than an hour into the reception. My father and Stella called
called me the next day and told me off for how I treated Zoe. This had been her first time making a wedding dress, and she had been excited to see me wear it. They said it was insulting to me to not wear the dress that she put so much effort into. I tried to explain why I didn't wear the dress, but they were both insisting the dress was beautiful and I could have just sucked it up. Now, my husband and my other sister are on my side, but I've been feeling guilty about this since I decided not to wear the dress. So honestly, am I in the wrong here? Because seriously, I don't know what to do. I don't think you're the jerk at all, and the fact that your dad and Stella are basically trying to force you to wear this stupid dress, in my opinion, is super toxic. I mean, this is your wedding, right? You and your husband paid for the most of it, with your dad just paying for a few costs that you couldn't cover. So last I checked, if Zoe made a crappy dress, then you're under no obligation to have to wear it. So what if she put a lot of time and effort into it? She clearly did it wrong, and she didn't go with the agreed upon design at all. Like, if I was in your shoes, I would be pretty upset as well. And this literally is all Zoe's fault too, by the way. If she had just given updates to the original poster, then literally all of this could have been avoided. She could have received all the direction she could have needed from the original poster, and this dress could probably come out looking closer to what the original poster wanted. But instead, it really seems like she slapped it together last minute and decided, here you go, this is good enough. Like, that seriously is obnoxious, and honestly, I would not put up with that for a second. So no, you are not the jerk, and you were definitely not obligated to wear that dress at your wedding. And anybody who's trying to guilt trip you in some kind of way, in my opinion, is completely out of line. Am I the jerk for refusing to help my dad's wife with their baby, as well as telling them that I am not their helper? Because right now they are very upset with me, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. I'm a 17-year-old male, and my dad and I do not have a good relationship. When my mom was sick with cancer, my dad was out cheating on her, and he left me to take care of my younger siblings. I have a sister who's 12 years old and a brother who's 11. He even let me catch him with 2 different women during that time, and my mom was on hospice care. So it was really difficult not to say anything, but I was so overwhelmed and scared that saying the wrong thing would take her from us sooner. Now, this was 4 years ago, and I never forgave him for what he put me through. I told him before that I never want to be like him when I grow up, and he is no role model to me. I also called him a failure as a husband and a father. Well, he was angry at being called a failure as a father, but when his 3 kids needed him the most, he wasn't there. Instead, he was messing around with women on the side. He also said he loved my mom and never wanted me to say he was all bad as her husband. I said I found it so hard to believe, and he would never convince me he actually loved her. Now, I was still mostly in charge after my mom passed away, but eventually my siblings started to pick up some skills, so I wasn't basically doing it all. It really helped, and it made us regular siblings again, instead of me almost being a dad to the family. But it was also tough because they're really young, and I hated that they were forced to grow up so fast. Losing our mother did that anyways. Fast forward, and my dad met someone a couple of years ago, and he introduced her to us last year, and it took only a few weeks for her to move in. Then suddenly she's pregnant, and they raced to get married. My dad's wife tried to involve my siblings and me in her pregnancy excitement, but I wasn't excited, and I don't think they were either. I'm pretty sure we all avoided her as much as we could. The baby was born in December, and she has been reaching out to me to help pretty often. But the thing is, I don't help her. I check in on my siblings where I can, but other than that, I focus on myself. I know biologically that baby is my half-sibling, but I just don't care. I don't see them as a sibling, and I'm not planning to bond with them or keep them in my life once I'm in college. I won't even speak to my dad either, just my siblings. Recently, Dad's wife has been pressing more for my help, and the other day, she asked me why I could be such a great big brother to my younger siblings, but I have never even held her baby. She told me she sees me do so much for my siblings, and knows that I was the person who helped them through when my mom was sick and when she passed away. She told me she figured I would want to be the same for her baby, but I told her it wasn't my job to help and to get her husband if she needed help. She told me she wanted her baby to be accepted, and none of us had accepted the baby yet, and none of us had even interacted with the baby yet. She said it's not fair and she needs help, but I told her I am not a helper, and she needs to hire someone if she really wants help, or to repeat myself again, she can get my dad, but I won't be doing anything for her or her baby. Well, as a result, she called me disgusting. So am I the jerk here? What should I do? Honestly, I think with all things considered, I don't think you're the jerk. If she knows about your mom passing away, as well as you stepping up to take care of your siblings, then she has got to know how much of a deadbeat your dad actually is. He abandoned you and your siblings and did nothing to help the family. He cheated on your
mom and made your life a lot more miserable than it needed to be. Not to mention the fact that your mom passed away in the process of all of this. Like, I can't imagine that happening to me, but I know if I was in your shoes, I would feel the exact same way. He betrayed your trust and your siblings' trust, and I don't blame you for being upset and choosing to keep your distance from his new family that he's clearly trying to create. Because what he did to you and your siblings is unacceptable, and in my opinion, you have every right to be upset. An entitled Karen goes on a long, insulting rant, making fun of my art project and my house in the process, and I'm honestly still blown away by this Karen's entitlement. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I'm an artist, and one of my most popular items are customized haunted home drawings of people's houses. They send me a photo and I draw it as a spooky house. It's a pretty cut and dry process. I vend at local markets and oddity events, and my stuff is kind of gothy and very niche. I'm no stranger to the entitled Karen side-eye when they clearly don't care for my work, but this Karen was just so mad about something so stupid. The sample haunted home I have on display, next to an actual photo of the house, is my own home. I'm a mid-30s millennial in a high cost of living area, and I'm just happy to have been able to buy a home at all. It was a lot of timing and luck, and it's no mansion or anything like that, but from the outside my home does look very small. When I was explaining the process to this entitled Karen, she looked at the sample, which is my house by the way, and with this disgusted look on her face, she said to me, "But this house is so small. Why would anyone want a drawing of something like this? It's barely a house at all. Maybe a shed, really." She even called her friend over to point it out and laugh a bit, and continued to talk about how embarrassing it was, and who could possibly live in a shack like that, continuing to say there's no room for anything, and the scariest thing about it is how small it is. Now, she went on for a fairly long time, and I was kind of struck silent. Eventually, when I snapped back to reality, I just smiled and said, "Well, we make it work. I'm just grateful to even have a home in a market like this." And I said that in the most sugary, sweet way possible. But really, I was just trying not to cry. Now, to give her the most minimal credit, this entitled Karen turned red, did a 180, and walked away. So, in the end, she at least had the tiniest bit of shame. Wow, some people just can't keep their mouths shut. Like, seriously, she went on this long tirade and this long rant about this house, not thinking for a second that the way she's acting is probably like super rude. Like, she very easily could have been like, "Oh, that's cool," and then moved on. But instead, this entitled Karen just had to make her stupid opinion known. And to that regard, I am so happy that the original poster basically called her out, because the way this Karen acted honestly was just not okay, as there was no reason to go on such a long tirade over something so simple. My entitled father-in-law causes his family to go bankrupt in less than 3 months, as he fell for multiple scams where he gave out all of his banking and financial information to scammers who were claiming to be investors. And I'm honestly blown away by how idiotic and stupid my father-in-law truly was. Here's what happened. So my father-in-law not only lost all his family's money, but also went deep into debt in under 3 months. He first fell for a weird investment scheme. He invested 500 euros on some website that claimed to be able to multiply his investment in just a few weeks. After watching some fake numbers on a fake website rise to astronomical heights, he decided to invest 50,000 euros and then another 50,000 euros on top of that. When his supposed investment had skyrocketed to a 7-figure number, he tried to withdraw it but found himself unable to do so. The investment company then contacted him and told him they would gladly send him his money. But since this is an international transfer, he needs to put forward 5,000 euros to cover transfer fees and taxes, which he unfortunately gladly did. A week after, they emailed him again and tried to tell him that his 5,000 euros did not cover the whole fee and that they needed more. Now, instead of sending more money, he decided to put his foot down and demanded that they send his money immediately. Well, they called him back, telling him that all they needed were his bank details. So he literally gave them his card numbers, his online login, and even gave them his 2-factor authentication code several times. Now, instead of giving him his millions, he got his savings and his bank accounts completely drained, and they went down literally as far as they will go. Since my father-in-law is kind of entitled, and he really likes to brag about how much credit he has available, this meant that he was down almost 50,000 euros. When he found himself unable to literally pay for anything, and his bank desperately calling him, he went to the bank manager, who almost had a heart attack. He ended up going to the police to file a report, he closed his accounts, and got a new credit for the overdraft, and got a new non-compromised account. 2 weeks later, some random guy called him out of the blue and claimed to be an international fraud investigator, and offered to pursue his scammers to get his millions
millions for him. All he needed to get started was a €3,000 fee, which my father-in-law gladly paid. The guy then sent him mail, demanding more money since the job unexpectedly turned out harder than anticipated. Well, my father-in-law refused and demanded the investigator do the job he was already hired for. Well, the investigator then contacted him again and said he had managed to secure his millions, but all this guy needed was his bank details. So he literally again gave away his card numbers, his online login, and two-factor authentication codes to his new account to some random guy on the phone, who, by the way, barely even spoke his language. And he did this for the second time, and once again, his bank account gets drained. He literally went from having €320,000 in his retirement fund to being almost negative €50,000 in debt in about 3 months. So you might be wondering, where are we now? Well, the only reason he hasn't entered literal bankruptcy yet is all because his wife has her finances all completely separate from him. And now she has to fund their entire life while his monthly pension payments get almost completely garnished to pay off his debt. We also spoke to a lawyer and they told us that he is completely on the hook for all the lost money and any accrued debt because there is no judge in this nation that would not consider him at the very least grossly negligent for what he did. And you know what? My father-in-law still believes that he made millions. Wow, that is actually insane. Like, this guy is seriously not safe with his money. He went from having €320,000 in his retirement fund to being in the negative €50,000. Like, this guy should not be handling any kind of money. That is seriously such a stupid investment, and I can't believe he wouldn't have vetted these sources just a little bit more instead of going from €500 all the way up to €50,000. Like, that seriously is such a bad call. So unfortunately, he's probably never getting that money back, but hopefully this never happens again, because clearly your father-in-law cannot be trusted with money. And for the sake of you and your family, I hope he doesn't get his hands on any sizable amount anytime soon. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for blocking my grandmother after she refused to apologize for bringing up family drama? Because right now I'm seriously upset, and at this point I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my grandmother and I had an argument again we had last year. We were vacationing together and had a great time for the most part, but she kept bringing up how burdensome my mom is in her life. Now, for reference, my grandmother fully financially supports her, and she says that she feels obligated to since she is her daughter. Now, I haven't had any real ties to my mom since I was 15. She would be homeless now without my grandmother as she refuses to work, and she spends all of her time with shady people who get her evicted from the places that my grandmother rents for her. My family has all advised my grandmother to let her fall on her own, and I myself say it every single time she talks to me about the latest difficulty she has with my mother, but she just says that she can't do that. Well, I raised my voice after asking her to please talk about anything else, because I'm honestly so tired of this. I don't control my mom, and I am fully aware of what a basket case she is. It just brings me down to hear about it, and I would rather not. And for a while after that, she stopped bringing it up. Well, my father passed away a little less than 2 years ago, and I was with her the other day, and she wouldn't stop telling me the same story that she's told me a few times before. In 2013, my dad had an agreement with my grandmother, and it stated that grandma and grandpa will pay for most of their mortgage if they can handle the rest. She frames the story as a mistake that ruined her life, and how if not for that, everything would be so much better right now. But I was 13 when that happened. I couldn't fix it as I wasn't really aware of it either. I also can't do anything about it now, and the fact that he's passed away makes it more hurtful to me. So I told her, please stop complaining about my family when we hang out. It won't help and we can't fix it. Well, she refused, stating that it was family history and she was just stating facts. But I told her that I've heard it all before, and this is the third time this exact same story has been told to me since he passed away. I told her the story is boring and uninteresting to me. I mean, she never even says anything bad about my uncle, who's had a divorce that I never even learned about. I was angry, so my voice was raised, and I told her to tell me that story, but she said she had no idea. But she and my uncle are and always have been very close. I just find it unbelievable that any mother who's not estranged wouldn't know why her son had a divorce. I called her a liar because I was upset at this point, and I was plugging my ears to get her to see that I wasn't interested in continuing the conversation, especially when it's about my late father. But regardless, she still persisted. She texted me saying that she can't sleep and how I should should not have attacked my uncle. I told her I didn't say anything bad about him. I just wanted to know that history instead, and the way she's framing it is not fair because it's actually new information to me. I said to her that she should be ashamed to talk bad about my father who's passed away, and if she won't apologize, I will block her. Well, she refused, and then wrote this entire paragraph about how she isn't ashamed and did her best and listed all the ways that she's helped out. She then finished that by saying, "So the ball's in your court," and as a result, I just blocked her. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Honestly, I don't think you're the jerk at all. I think what you asked of your grandmother is completely reasonable, because from the sounds of it, it really seems like she wants to take out all of her problems about your dad on you. That's the only reason she's bringing it up every time you guys spend time together. And that's really toxic and really not fair. Like, you are not responsible for any deals that your dad made with your grandmother, and it's really weird for her to like take it out on you in some kind of way, because honestly, that's the way it feels. So no, I don't think you're the jerk, because it really seems like your grandma is being obnoxious. And I know if I was in your shoes, I would probably feel the exact same way. My girlfriend blatantly breaks my laptop screen and is now refusing to not only take any responsibility for it, but she's also refusing to pay anything towards fixing it. And right now, as a result, I am incredibly frustrated because at this point, I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I live with my partner, and we have been together for around 3 years. Recently, I've noticed when she's tidying some things away, she places them on my laptop. And I've asked her if she would not do that, as she's putting quite heavy objects on it, and I don't want my laptop to get damaged. She said it'll be fine and to stop worrying about it, but I just asked her again to please not do it. Well, she didn't listen, and she kept doing it, and each time I noticed, I would remove the items. Well, I went to use my laptop, and half of the screen just has thick lines through it, so the laptop is completely unusable. I told my girlfriend this, and I told her it's because she keeps piling things on top of it. Well, she once again said that it's fine, and that I can just get a new one, but I told her I expect her to replace it, since she's the one who broke it. She said it was an accident, but I pointed out that she repeatedly ignored me when I told her not to put things on it, so I expect her to get me a replacement. Well, she refused, and said that I could just use hers when she's not using it, but I said no. I should have my own laptop, and she should replace it, since she's the one who damaged it. She got annoyed and said I shouldn't be expecting her to pay for it, since it's my laptop, and she would have to use some of her savings. I told her it's her own fault, and that I need a replacement. Well, she said that I was being unreasonable just by asking her to spend some of her savings, but I think I'm being completely reasonable, especially when she's the one who broke it. So honestly, does anyone have any advice on how to handle this situation? Because at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, for starters, it really seems like your girlfriend is the reason your laptop broke. And I know exactly the problem you're having because this happened to me as well. Sometimes if you put heavy stuff on the back of a closed laptop, it can permanently mess up the screen. And I know the lines that you're talking about and all of that. And that is really frustrating, and it is very expensive to fix. But it honestly makes me wonder if just fixing the screen would be cheaper than buying a brand new laptop altogether. I'm not sure what kind of laptop you have, so hopefully it's like reasonable, but there might be some kind of middle ground where you're like, okay, you don't have to like change out the entire laptop, but at least pay for the repairs or something like that. And of course, that's at least compared to like if it would be cheaper to just buy a new laptop compared to fixing the screen, because sometimes that is the case. It's all relative to the type of laptop you get, but the main punchline is that yes, your girlfriend is on the hook for this. I find this to be a completely reasonable expectation, and the fact that she's unwilling to even take responsibility for it, in my opinion, is a giant red flag, and that is not something I would personally take lightly. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. My grandma always complains about my condo, as she states that it's absolutely disgusting. But after receiving these comments one too many times, I'm seriously at my breaking point, and I now don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 26-year-old female, and I've been living in my own place since 2020. Like any responsible adult, I did my best to keep my place clean. My skills aren't exactly professional level, but neither I nor my guests saw anything wrong with how my condo looked. However, things changed during my first holiday season in my current job. For context, I've been working at a certain retail store since 2022. It should go without saying that retail can be pretty exhausting, especially during the holidays. But despite the long, busy hours during that time, I made sure that my condo didn't become a pigsty. Now, I have a grandmother who sometimes comes to visit me. I don't know how to say this, but my grandma is a clean freak. In the beginning, I'd never heard her complain about how my condo looked, but during my first holiday season at my current job, my grandmother started to complain about how messy my condo was. As I mentioned before, I didn't have as much energy to clean my condo during the holiday season, just like I would on any other day. But at the same time, it's not like I had garbage all over the floor or anything like that. There's usually something small, like a bit of dust on the shelves or a few strands of hair in the sink, but honestly, that's it. Every time my grandmother came over, she complained about different things, like how the litter box smelled and that the bathroom wastebasket wasn't emptied. First off, cat litter smells weird regardless of how fresh it is, and there was even this one time when grandma complained about the smell, even though the litter was changed about 3 days prior, and it was free of any cat droppings at the time. As for the wastebasket, it was somewhere between 1/2 and 2/3 full when she complained about it, and I should also mention that the wastebasket didn't have a lid, and you could see inside of it. Yet for some reason, my grandma was appalled as if the thing was overflowing with trash. After months of hearing negative comments about my condo being disgusting, one incident made me reach my breaking point. It all started when the sink stopper in my bathroom sink got stuck, making it impossible to drain. I told grandma about it and she offered to come over to help. The moment she walked into the bathroom, grandma immediately started to complain about how dirty the bathroom was. She even started deep cleaning the bathroom, saying things like, "Oh my god, this is so gross." When she was done, my grandma told me that she hoped nobody saw my bathroom in that state, and it took every ounce of strength in me to not scream every profanity under the sun before kicking her out. The thing is, I have a neighbor who came over a few times to help out with things and she never commented on anything. I know for a fact that my condo is not poorly maintained as my grandma claims. Once during the holidays, the property manager came over with a plumber to inspect the pipes. It was nothing serious and it was just to make sure everything's in order. The property manager and I were chatting when I asked her how my condo looked, and surprisingly, she said that I did a good job of keeping it clean. She even promised to tell my landlady the same thing. So if this doesn't prove that I'm not a slob, then honestly nothing would. The most messed up thing about this is that the state of my condo is no different from before grandma's criticism started. In fact, neither she nor anyone else has said anything about how my condo looked until then. Growing up, I was always criticized for rather petty reasons and forced to live up to some unnecessary, if not ridiculous, standards. When I moved out of my parents' place, I thought that I didn't have to put up with that anymore. Yet here I am living with yet another cycle of BS demands and nobody caring about how they hurt me. Now, I will admit that my place isn't spotless, but unless my condo is dirty to the point where it actually bothers others as well as myself, I don't think it's fair to say that I don't clean enough, if at all, especially if it's coming from a clean freak like my grandmother. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? Because at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. First of all, I can see why your parents probably acted like weirdos when it comes to criticizing you about everything, because just look at the way their mother was acting towards you. Because it really seems like this was a cycle that started with your grandmother, and it's now trickled down to you even though you've moved out. So of course, you're definitely not the jerk, and it seems like your grandmother just does this to everybody. And I'm sure that your condo is completely fine. I'm sure it's clean just like anybody else's would be, and for her to imply that your place is a pigsty, in my opinion, is super rude, and that is not something that you should have to put up with. So if I was in your shoes, I would definitely tell her straight up that if she doesn't like my condo, then maybe she shouldn't come over, because her attitude towards it is really obnoxious, and you definitely do not deserve to be treated that way in the slightest. My father has been telling everyone for the past year how he's gonna pay for an extravagant wedding for me, but now he's refusing to pay for anything, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, I want to start off by saying that I'm not complaining because my dad doesn't want to pay for the wedding, but it's more that in our culture, the father usually pays, and he explicitly and many times over has told everyone, including my fiance's family, that he is going to do a crazy wedding for us. He regularly sends them pictures and videos of the crazy stuff he's going to pay for at the wedding. When me and him argue about what he pays me weekly working for him, he pretty much tells me to shut up and that I'm paying for your stupid wedding. And most of the time, that has won the argument. He knows on my salary I could never pay for my own wedding. My car insurance is $400 a month, and my health insurance is $300 a month. The truck I drive to do work for him costs in gas about $240 a month. I obviously go on dates with my fiance, and I eat out because most of the time I'm on the road, so if I'm lucky, I'm able to save about $1,000 a month. An average wedding here is about $30,000 to $40,000, so it would take me like 3 years just to save that. I have saved about $20,000, which is enough for me to move out, buy furniture, and put put a security deposit, but I can't pay for a wedding and move out. But he just kept saying, oh, we'll see. I'll talk to the venue. I'll leave a deposit. But then he never does anything about it. The guy at the venue gave us a deadline till today. And if we don't do it, then he's going to give our dates to somebody else. My fiance's family is getting annoyed and is now insisting we do the wedding overseas for about $3,000 to $5,000. When I told my dad, he got mad and said it would cost the family way more to buy tickets to go there. My fiance decided to go sit down and talk with him herself, but he spent the whole time trying to turn her on me. First, he told her that I take a lot of medications and order a lot of pills on Amazon, to which she responded that yes, he does order vitamins that he takes daily, as we do share an Amazon account. Then he says that I carry them around in a pill container, but she just said yes, I order that for him because he used to take them on an empty stomach, but this way it allows him to take them to work and take them after lunch. Then he said, well, you know, a few years ago, my son made me put $10,000 in a deposit for a girl he was engaged to for a wedding, so I'm honestly a little hesitant this time. For the record, he put down $4,000, even though my siblings who were there vouched for this, and he knows we broke it off because she was cheating on me. Then she asked him if he ever plans on giving me a raise because $600 a week for someone living on their own is realistically not enough. He just walked around the question. He then said, well, he's still learning and not doing enough work around here. But the thing is, there's not enough work because the business is dead. She then asked if he could help me find another job, to which he said that I need to help him. Now, I've been helping him for the past 10 years. I went from $400 a week all the way up to $600 a week right now, and I haven't had a raise in almost 5 years. I once got a job for $70,000 a year, and he got so mad that he all of a sudden wanted me to pay $2,000 a month to him for rent. He also wanted help with taxes at $500 a month, while also pushing car insurance and the truck onto me. But here's the thing, he knew that I had no savings to move out, and I had no savings to buy a car. What bothers me the most is that all this time, he has been going around telling all our friends and family of this extravagant wedding that he literally thinks he's planning for me and my fiance. But it's only now that he's telling me he can no longer pay for it. He says he has no money, but he literally just bought my sister a car for $50,000 and has regularly bought garbage that he says he needs from auctions for upwards of $60,000 just this year alone. And all of this is just rotting in his warehouse. Even my mom is telling me that she knows he has money. My fiance was thinking maybe he doesn't like her, but I've caught him so many times telling his friends how amazing she and her family are, and at this point I just don't know how to feel about my father. So I really need to know, would it be messed up if I just throw a small ceremony and cut him off completely? Because at this point I really don't know what to do. Okay, this has nothing to do about the wedding or anything like that. I think it all comes down to the fact that he does not want you to leave that job. He wants you to stick around and help his business out for next to nothing. That's the only reason he's treating you the way that he is. Like, think about it for a second. This guy is intentionally keeping your pay low so that you can never save up any money and move out. Like, he's already ruined your chance of getting other jobs. Who's to say he wouldn't keep doing this in perpetuity forever? As far as I'm concerned, it sounds like he's got himself a free slave to do whatever he wants. And that's honestly what's going on here. And just to put your mind at ease, I think you need to cut out the idea that he's gonna somehow pay for your wedding. That is literally never gonna happen, and if it does, I can guarantee you it's gonna be a nightmare. So in my opinion, I think it might be time to move out first and then try to plan a wedding on your own, because the way your dad's treating you financially right now is not appropriate. He is literally manipulating you like actively right now, and it's very obvious that he will go to any extent to make sure that you're stuck as some poor servant to him, which is something you absolutely do not deserve. An entitled Karen tries to apologize for cussing me out not even a few days prior, but after listening to her fake apology, I decided to say that I don't accept her apology and that I hold her responsible for everything that she said. And I've honestly never felt better about putting a Karen in her place in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so this story happened a few years ago. At the time, my store offered 1-hour photo processing, and I was the head photo tech in our lab. This did not make me a manager in any way, but I had just been in the position for years at this point. If no one has ever worked in a photo lab, you should know that we have to deal with a US federal copyright law. If someone tried to print a photo that they did not create themselves, or an image owned by someone else, we cannot legally print it without permission from the owners. The customer that came in had several images of Disney characters that she claimed to have bought off of Etsy. Regardless of where she bought them, Disney characters are a big no-no on the copyright copyright scale. We can't even print those novelty photos you get taken at the park without a release. Now, I tried to refuse her images, but she just starts throwing a fit. Now, I expected as much, as most people have issues when I don't let them have their photos without understanding the rules that we have to follow. Normally, just explaining it to them is enough to get them to calm down, but this customer was cussing and yelling at me and would not calm down regardless of what I did. So eventually, she said the magic words that she wants to speak to a manager. And you know what? That is absolutely fine by me. I call my boss and I tell him what is going on, and he comes to talk to the customer. He explains everything I just explained to the customer again and apologizes to the customer. He says to her that there's nothing that we can do and that we're sorry as it is the law. The customer then leaves and I don't think anything about it. That is until 2 days later when she comes back in. Now, at first she was okay. She came up to the lab, patiently waited her turn, and tried to print the photos again. Well, we had the same runaround, and after calling the same manager again, the customer tried to apologize to me, saying that she really just wanted the photos and that she was sorry for calling me every bad word that she could think of. She said to me, "I apologize, can we please just put this behind us?" But at this moment, I looked at her and I said, "No, I do not accept your apology. There was no need for you to say any of what you just did." Now, this entitled Karen looked at me very confused. She said to me, "You can't just not accept an apology." But I looked at her square in the eye and I said, "Yes, actually I can. I hold you responsible for what you said, and your words hurt." My manager, then stepping in, said to her, "Ma'am, I think you should probably go home now." And it was honestly so great to watch this Karen get put in her place. Wow, this story is incredible for a few reasons. For starters, you have an amazing manager. This guy had your back pretty much from the get-go. He clearly understands what it's like to deal with entitled Karens who are just raging lunatics, and he had your back even when you said, "No, I don't accept your apology." And even just touching on that moment by itself, like that seriously takes a lot of guts to sit there and say, "No, I don't accept your apology." And honestly, good for you for taking that stand, by the way, because this entitled Karen was not apologizing for any good reason. She wasn't saying that because she meant it or because she felt bad. She was only saying that because she was trying to manipulate the situation. She wanted this to be behind her so that she could get her stupid photos printed. That's all that was going on here. Like literally, that's it. She didn't actually care about how you felt or anything like that. And so when you said, "No, I don't accept your apology," honestly, that probably really confused her. Because people who act like this, they're not expecting any kind of like pushback in some kind of way. Like when I worked in customer service, it really kind of baffled me how troublesome like customers think that you can't bite back, especially when they start it. Like I'm gonna be professional up to a point, but after that, you can basically kiss any kind of politeness goodbye because I'm not gonna give you the time of day at that point. So honestly, good for you for taking a stand and not taking this garbage for a second, because the way you handled this and put this entitled Karen in her place was simply amazing. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My mother-in-law blames me because her son doesn't visit her as much. And now I feel like I'm in the crossfire of something that I definitely did not participate in, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So for a little bit of background, my husband and I have been together for 4 years and married for less than 2 months. We both run our individual businesses and have been very busy in our lives, to the point where we don't even have much time for each other than late night evenings or the occasional afternoon on a weekend. My relationship with my mother-in-law has always been alright. I try to avoid drama at all costs, so whenever we interact, I usually just listen and support her. We have never had direct confrontation up until this point or any conflict. Her son and husband, however, don't have the best relationship with her. My husband, even before getting married, rarely goes home because he's told me that it takes up a lot of mental preparation every time right before he visits her. My father-in-law works 8 months out of the year abroad, and when he is home, he doesn't share a bed with my mother-in-law and spends all his time visiting his sister and his mom. Since we got married in February, I started a new business, and my husband was working on expanding his other business, so we have been on edge and extremely stressed out. Just a few days ago, my mother-in-law reached out to my husband, asking him to come home to celebrate my husband's 31st birthday. Now, we live about an hour away, and because of our busy schedule, he asked his mother if we could meet halfway. Well, she refused, and specifically requested that he must come home, and only then will she decide the time. Now, I'm not sure what got into my husband's head, or if it was due to years of resentment, but he lost his patience on her and became very irritated, and said something along the lines of, Okay, then I guess maybe not this time, but we can meet another time. They hung up, and then 5 minutes later, my husband receives a lengthy text message from my mother-in-law blaming me for not letting him go home and how I must really dislike her. Now, this was a huge shock to me because I never had any conflicts with my mother-in-law and was not even involved in the planning of this dinner whatsoever, but it suddenly just fell all on me. I felt terrible and immediately called her even though she didn't pick up, and I ended up leaving a voice note to her apologizing that we care for her and that I always remind my husband to go home, but he's just been caught in chaos these past months. I then also immediately ordered a tea and biscuit gift box with expedited delivery to her with a heartfelt letter, and I did that because I didn't know if showing up uninvited would have been the best thing to do since she was very emotional. Now, my husband clarified to her that I've never done such a thing, and instead I always tell him to visit her more, and when she said that, it's right about then that she went absolutely crazy, calling me a horrible person. Now, I heard nothing back from my end, and the next thing you know, she's deleted and blocked me from every social media. I felt absolutely horrible, but also very frustrated and angry because I don't know what I did wrong, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, first and foremost, I need you to know that basically from my perspective, you didn't do anything wrong. Like quite literally, you did absolutely nothing wrong, and it really seems like your mother-in-law is just looking around desperately to try and blame somebody, and that is just so super toxic. Like she literally is like, oh, you're not gonna come home to visit? It must be your wife's fault. It's like, what are we talking about? She's not even a part of the conversation. Just because your son can't come home, it doesn't mean the wife is somehow scheming in the background. Like that literally is insane. There's no excuse for that. But also, I'm kind of wondering why you apologized to her in the first place. Like, you know for a fact you didn't do anything wrong. So I know if I was in your shoes, there's no way I would ever apologize for something that I definitely didn't do. It would be different if there was some kind of like misunderstanding or something like that, or maybe you said or did something that got misconstrued or something along those lines. Something where she is actually kind of justified in being upset with you in some kind of way. But it legitimately doesn't seem like you've played any role in any of this. And to that end, I just don't think it was a good idea to apologize. And I don't think you did it because you're like rolling over and like kissing her butt or anything like that. Maybe just to try and like keep the peace or something along those lines. But in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, that would only happen this one time and never again. Because personally, I am not in the business of accepting someone else's blame for something that I didn't do. And at least now you know your mother-in-law is going to treat you like this, which in my opinion is completely unacceptable. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for getting tired of doing other people's work, all because they would rather talk to their friends or coworkers instead of doing their job? Because right now I feel very exhausted, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I have several coworkers, also fellow delivery drivers, who tend to stand around and either be on their phones or talk to people rather than doing the secondary tasks that they're supposed to be doing. An example of this would be from a couple of weeks ago. I came into work in the evening as a short shift, which meant that I had to do the dough prep for the next day. For reference, I work at a pizza joint. The dish table was completely full of dishes, and there were also 2 stacks of dirty pans on the floor that were up to my knee or higher. The other driver that was scheduled to close was nowhere to be seen, and he wasn't out on a delivery run either. So as soon as I clocked in and got my bank for doing deliveries, I went back there and started in on the dishes. For most of my 4-hour shift, I was switching between doing dishes, doing delivery runs, and doing next day's dough prep. And this is just one of many times where this has happened. One of the things we need to do when we're doing dishes is to make sure we're scraping out any remaining food pieces that stick to the sides and the bottom of the pan. For the longest time, the only people that were doing that were one coworker who had worked at the store for about 30 years and myself. Well, back in November, he had to go on leave due to needing emergency eye surgery on his remaining eye, and he had to be gone till recently. That meant that I was the only one scraping out dishes when I was doing them. And again, that's been since November. I've politely asked my coworkers to remember to scrape out the dishes before running them through the dishwasher and to double check them afterwards, but it seems like I wasted my breath with that. There was one night where one of my coworkers, we'll call him Tim, that's not his real name, was on closing shift and doing the dishes. I had politely asked him to please remember to scrape at the dishes, and he said to me, sure thing. He then proceeded to do that with a few dishes. Then he tried to spray the stuck food out with a sink sprayer, but slowly he just started not doing it at all, putting just washed dishes with food still stuck in them on the clean dish stacks. I decided to see how bad this really was with one of the dishes, and in short, I put the same dish back over on the table to be washed 3 different times, and it still had the piece of food stuck in it. I I even came back the next day and I found out the same dish still had the food stuck in it. I got so fed up with doing this for the last 4 months at the time, I stopped scraping out dishes and started doing what everyone else was doing. Now, I've complained multiple times in the last year alone about this problem with not scraping out dishes, and the best answer I got from management was them saying, "Oh, I'll keep an eye out and I'll watch Tim." And I just think to myself, yeah, sure, but how are you gonna do that when you're up front cutting pizzas and taking care of customers? I'm just so incredibly sick and tired of doing other people's work and them getting away with doing whatever. I've thought about asking for a raise, but I was told that I'd probably get laughed at or told no because I did get a raise at the beginning of the year. So long story short, I'm so tired of doing other people's work, especially when I've got enough work to do on my own. So am I the jerk for thinking this way? What should I do? First of all, you are definitely not the jerk. Like, it really sounds like your coworkers are literally taking advantage of your kindness. And it doesn't sound like your boss is doing anything about that. Like, here you are doing everybody's job, and suddenly you're the one that's getting the short end of the stick because stuff isn't getting done, and you're the only one with like any kind of like workplace integrity. So to that end, I do commend you for actually making an effort at work, but also you definitely should not feel obligated to do other people's jobs. It is not your responsibility to pick up their slack, especially if they're just going to be lazy about it. So in my opinion, I think maybe it's time to just do what you're supposed to do and not pick up anybody else's slack. If your job description does not include taking care of what Tim is or isn't doing, then by all means, let Tim mess up. Like, it really seems like some of these people need to fall on their own sword, and honestly, that is not something that you need to try and save. I would also document every single time you went to your boss and explained why you're upset and why someone else is messing up. That way, if you need to escalate it further, you can be like, well, I did go to you on this day and this day at this time, and you did nothing about it. Because trust me when I say this, I know exactly what you're going through. I've had coworkers in previous jobs who did not carry their weight, so I felt the need to try and pick up their slack so that everything can get done. But personally, once I decided I'm just gonna do my job and I shouldn't be forced to try and do someone else's job, that's when my work really became enjoyable. And those people who were slacking really did get in trouble and were forced to do their job correctly. So maybe that might be a good option for you, because from the sounds of it, it really seems like everyone's taking advantage of your willingness to do their job. And in my opinion, you should absolutely not have to do that for them. An entitled Karen makes my life a living nightmare as we tried to host a banquet for her and her family. And I've honestly never been more blown away by someone's entitlement in my life. Here's what happened. So this weekend, I had the weirdest mix of people I experienced so far, and now that I've been able to let that sink in, I figured I would finally share my story. I had a booking for a large party this weekend for almost a year now. Originally, there was supposed to be 60 people, and it was supposed to be on a Sunday. Now, we're a small family-run business, but we're pretty good at banquets like that, and we've built a good reputation. So this was certainly not my first rodeo, but sincerely, none that I would forget. Someone else asked me about a large birthday this Saturday, but the person was already quite sick, so they didn't want to book it immediately, and in the meantime, the party for Sunday moved the date to Saturday. And so we ended up with 2 banquets in one day, one for lunch, one for dinner, and for a bigger restaurant that might seem like not a big deal, but we have very little staff, so we all knew it would be very tough, but we didn't want to disappoint any of those 2 parties. But if only we really knew what was about to go down. Now, the second party, which is the evening birthday one, didn't waste much time picking their menu. The first party, however, had to be reminded like 30 times to please come in and to have a talk about that specifically. The wife showed up like a month prior to the date and told me that she has like 10 minutes. So I'm just thinking like, okay, well, let's just show her what the other party is going to have, as it would probably make it easier for us too. She took the menu home to talk to her husband, agreed on the phone, and asked about the price. Now, this is where everything starts to really go down. Now look, to be completely honest with you, if you ask me, this is not the most intricate menu, but it had something for everyone and was one of the cheapest menus that we offer. But apparently to them, this was not good enough. I mean, they freaked out on us, and I was utterly confused. I don't think you'll get it cheaper anywhere around here, but I figured that they're just a young couple. They probably just don't know. So I explained calmly that there is no cheaper option. Also, they took so long to talk to me. There was no shot they would get a different location for that date, so obviously they were stuck. Now, this Karen called me 11 times that day, which for me is already a big red flag. Also, the guest list shrunk to 40 people, and I think to myself, alright, it is what it is. But then it took her another 2 weeks to let us know that 12 of her guests were children, so that would be free of charge. And it's starting to be like, okay, is this even going to be worth the hassle? refill, but obviously you don't back out on someone so late. So anyways, fast forward and I talk to them a bit more often, and any given time I talk to either her or her husband, they only show disdain for the whole event. It's so much money for them, they got pressured by family, and the wife explicitly told me multiple times that she wants all of them out as soon as possible. And at this point, this is all starting to sound like a nightmare. The day comes and we're kind of prepped for the worst. I go in for the first round of drinks, and I ask every table if they would like anything else besides water. This idiotic husband then says, "It would be better if you just didn't ask. That way it's gonna be cheaper for us." And at that point, I just look at him in disbelief that he even just said that. This might have been a joke, but with all their complaining about money beforehand, this literally stuck with me. Also, I suspect his guests heard that too, because from like 70% of all of my guests, I got told that no, they're good with water. This made me feel very uncomfortable, but you know what? It's still my job. So I ask if I see an empty jar, but most people don't seem to finish their drink. So I get told, "Oh no, we're good," all the time, and I sincerely start to lose motivation. But I want to make this clear. I still ask and check every now and then, but they just don't order. Instead, they start coming up to the stupid bar and order. And at this point, I tell my coworker they're letting me look really stupid right now. Now, lunch in my book went well, not hers obviously, and I check if there's something to refill, but most people seem to already be done. So I don't order more at the kitchen. Weirdly enough, they asked for more plates, even though I already had like 10 extra. So I just brought more out, even though I had no idea why. Now, it's important to know the wife has been absent almost the entire time. She's been outside smoking with her girlfriends, and the family sits pretty much alone, and the vibe is just getting weird. I then realize the husband is watching sports on his phone, and I think to myself, there's no way. You people sincerely are trash. Then the wife starts to yell at my coworker how the buffet is empty and is supposed to be refilled all the time. But guess what? That's not how it works. And you know what? I looked around the room, and maybe 2 people are still eating, and it's not even like there's nothing left. But fine, we fill it up just a little bit more, which again, no one eats, and now that jerk is giving me the death stare. And that's if she's even there in the first place, since all of their friends and them stay outside. So I'm just like, whatever. I take care of the folks who remained inside, and I prep the cake for the buffet. And I'm doing this because I know that she said she wants it quick. And at this point, I'm completely with her on that. The problem is that they wanted to bring their own cake, and no one gave it to me, and no one seemed to care to go get it. So it took another hour until they even started eating cake. And now at this point, I'm just completely over it. I figure, you know what? Just eat your cake and take your miserable butts home. We've been working for 4 hours, and I had the next party arrive in 1 hour. So our time would be better spent getting something to eat ourselves. I definitely admit that I kind of abandoned them after all that garbage, and eventually she storms out and yells to me, saying that she'll get someone to pack her cake at the supermarket. So I just go, yep, go ahead and do that. I would have absolutely given her something if she would have asked me, but that's just ridiculous now. She then proceeds to stay until the next party arrives, which she said she wouldn't do, and especially until I was really busy, just so she could casually walk out and shout that she'll come in and pay tomorrow. I'm like, oh heck no, what in the world are you talking about? So I catch up to her and I let her know that's not cool, but she tells me she's too tired now and she'll come in tomorrow, saying all of this with the sweetest smile. And I know that Karen is up to some evil stuff, and it's all going through my head all night. And to top it all off, she left the leftover food she had me pack up just standing there, and it's really bugging me. Now, in complete contrast, the second party is incredibly great. They're the nicest people you'll ever meet. They're happy and actually incredibly grateful and respectful. And I gotta be honest, it was absolutely jarring. The next day, I meet her husband outside of our restaurant, but they don't come in for hours, and I'm like, what is going on? I leave for my lunch break and I see they're still in the car outside, and those absolute pieces of garbage literally camped outside all the way up until I left to then suddenly complain about me. They complained about me, my coworker, the food, and probably everything else to my dad, who is the boss, as if I didn't provide any service at all. Because apparently all me and my coworker did was stand around giving nobody drinks, and how there was little food, and some people didn't even eat at all. But then it's like, what were those extra plates for, lady? She also said that she was outside the entire time crying because the party was so bad. Yeah, that's right, folks. My service was so bad that I made her cry. But obviously that would be followed up by her saying we have to adjust the price. I mean, come on, I thought I've seen it all, but to drop so low is beyond even my imagination. I mean, this party sucked because she told people not to drink, and she wasn't even there most of the time, and her husband watched his phone like
like an 8-year-old and didn't even want to be here. So how in the world am I supposed to make any of this better? Now, funny enough, their bill was cheap. Like anyone I tell the number to goes, what? That's nothing for 30 people. But to bring this all to an end, the second party gave me the biggest tip I've ever gotten in my life. It was a lot of money. No one would ever tip that amount for even subpar service. So I mean, what are we even talking about here? If at all, my service would have been worse at night because I was tired and very stressed out after that day. So those stupid idiots can get lost. Take your cheap butt somewhere else because I for sure will never serve you ever again. Because I clearly would not want to make you cry. Yeah, that sounds like an absolute nightmare to deal with. And as someone who's worked in customer service, especially in the restaurant industry like this, I would seriously lose my mind, especially with them being like, oh, we'll just pay tomorrow. It's like, no, you're not. Nope, you're gonna pay it right now. Like, that's the part that really drove a nail in why I do not like these people you had to deal with. The rest of it is kind of like, whatever, you're just another customer. But for them to be like, oh no, we're gonna pay tomorrow. It's like, oh no, you're gonna pay right now or I'm gonna go nuts. So hopefully you never have to deal with these people ever again because they sounded obnoxious. And I would not want to deal with that if I was in your shoes. An entitled male Karen loses his mind at the gym I work at, freaking out on us when we tell him that his 5-year-old kid can't use our equipment, claiming that he pays over $1,000 a year to be a member of this gym and that we have no right to tell him what he can and cannot do. And I'm honestly still blown away by this guy's attitude. Here's what happened. So I work part-time at a community center fitness area. Most of the time, the people are lovely. We have regulars and it's nice to see them, and they work out, they clean up after themselves, and then they leave. And honestly, it's great. But some days it gets annoying. The community center is directly attached to a local high school. The very nice pool often holds high school swim meets and water polo matches and whatnot. To get to the pool observation deck, one must cut through said fitness center. On a game or meet day, a lot of people who normally wouldn't have access to our very large, expansive gym with super expensive equipment can suddenly be in the building and cause all kinds of problems. I only mention this because you have to be extra careful to reinforce rules on these days in case some stranger decides to try and deadlift 400 pounds and breaks a fibula or something like that. And today just happened to be one of those days. Now, Mr. Karen is a fellow I've never seen before, which is honestly no biggie. Maybe he's a new member or maybe he has a day pass. Regardless, I don't recognize him. He has a small child with him, and my best estimation is that the kid is probably about 5 years old. The man is in jeans and a sweater, and this seems rather strange, but I mean, who am I to judge what people exercise in? Now, our rules pretty explicitly state that children cannot use any equipment unless they are above the age of 14. From the ages of 8 years old and above, they are welcome to use our track as long as a guardian is in the building. Now, the man and the kid are on bikes, and to be fair, the kid isn't being a jerk, which is something that happens a lot too. Kids will run in like psychos and try to use a rower and inevitably squish a finger or drop a weight. So props to him, I guess. I walk up and apologize and tell him the kid can't be on the equipment, but he is more than welcome to use the track. Well, when I said that, Mr. Karen loses his mind. He says to me, "Why? He's not doing anything." I say to him, "You're right, but that is our rules, and I'm really sorry. Kids have to be older than 8 to use our track unsupervised, but he also can't be on our equipment." The male Karen then says, "How do you know he's not 8 years old?" Now, it doesn't take a genius to know that his kid is definitely not 8 years old. So as I'm looking at him like he's crazy, he says to me, "You assumed his age. I could do whatever I want." I say to him, "I did assume and I'm sorry, but he certainly isn't over 14 years old, so he cannot be on the equipment." Eventually, he asks for my manager, who tells him the same thing, with this male Karen responding with a classic line where he said that he doesn't pay $1,000 a year to be a member here just for us to tell him what he can and cannot do. He then asked for the Parks and Recreation City manager's contact. We happily give him this information, and then he swears at us and tells us to get lost as he leaves. Fast forward, and later on, I tell my other boss about this. They then go down to the registration to see who this guy is, and it turns out this guy isn't even a member. They have no record of him at all. Most likely, he just came in to watch water polo. So this entitled jerk just freaked out on us and completely lied through his teeth to us just to try and get his way. And I'm honestly still blown away by how awful this man acted. Wow, that guy's like either actually insane or he was so embarrassed for being called out that he made up some weird lie just to try and get away with whatever he was doing. Like, this guy wasn't even paying $1,000 a year. He was completely full of it. He wasn't even a member of this gym, and he's sitting there acting like he's some kind of long-standing member of this gym. Like, this guy's a complete moron. And I've just gotta say it, I can't
stand when I worked in customer service when people would act like this when they're caught in a lie, where they make up a bigger lie to cover up their mess up just to try and make themselves look like a hotshot so they can get out of hot water. Like, that really makes my skin crawl, and I can't stand people like this. So good for you and your manager for putting this guy in his place, and hopefully this guy never comes back ever again. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My dad demanded that I dig a hole as deep as I can so that we can properly install a trellis into our garden. So I decided to maliciously comply and have some fun, digging this hole as deep as possible, resulting in my dad laughing harder than he's ever laughed before, and also telling this story to this day about why you should always give more clear instructions. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened back when the Earth was young, and MTV still played music videos in the ancient age known as 1997. I was 13 years old and spending yet another weekend helping my dad with yard work and home improvement projects. Now, I'm not complaining. I learned a lot about home repair, and rather than getting an awful teenage job in retail, my dad paid me to assist him until I left for college. Now, just because I didn't hate it, it doesn't mean that I was a 13-year-old little jerk, however. On this day, we were putting up a trellis in the garden for plants to grow, and this was a simple job. Sink 2 posts, put cement in them to put them in place, and fill the trellis between them. My dad gave me a post hole digger, which, if you're not familiar with it, it looks like someone glued chopsticks to a pistachio shell so you could open and close it with a hinge. He showed me the spot for the first post and said dig it as deep as you can. So I went and made a foot-deep hole, thinking that that was enough to sink the 6-foot post that we had. He comes back and tells me not to be lazy and to dig deeper. In fact, he said, keep digging until I tell you it's deep enough. So this is where my malicious compliance came in as a 13-year-old. I knew that he would be back from the garage in about half an hour, so I went to town on this hole. I didn't stop for a break and just kept digging until the post hole digger fit in the hole completely, and I couldn't even open it to lift the dirt out. At that point, I taped a spade to a branch and I made the hole even deeper. When he came back, he said something along the lines of, well, let's see if you did it properly this time. He then drops the 6-foot post into the hole where it promptly disappears. There was a momentary look of shock on his face, but then he started laughing, like bent over, can't catch your breath laughing. To this day, I have never seen the man laugh as hard as that. When he was done, he told me I guess I did what I was told, but now I would have to figure out how to fish the pole out of the hole. Luckily, it was only a foot or so below the surface, and we got it out pretty easily. And to this day, my dad still tells this story as a warning about giving vague instructions. This was a really cute and wholesome story, because trust me, I think we've all been there where we're helping some kind of parent or somebody with the garden, or doing like housework or some chores, and you've just got to find a way to spice things up and make it just a little bit more interesting. So good for you for doing something really fun, and I'm glad your dad took it the right way, because really, this just sounds like a fun memory. Am I the jerk for telling my husband that I don't want my mother-in-law staying for the first weeks after our daughter is born? Because truly, she is not going to be of any help, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So after our daughter is born in 2 months, I want my mom to stay with us for a few days all the way up to a week to help me recover and help out with our little one, as my mother is amazing. She has always been there for me, and she wants to stay as she lives 2 hours away and commuting isn't an option. She'll give me space if I need it and help cook and clean. Well, my husband wants his mom to stay for 3 to 4 days after that, but I can almost guarantee that she will just be another child to babysit. She is always telling me what to do, and even though she abandoned all 5 of her kids, including my husband, when they were very little and signed over her rights, I am fairly certain that she's going to try and push her opinions on me of what I'm doing wrong, and my sleep-deprived self is going to lose it on her and strain our somewhat tenuous relationship and possibly even damage it permanently. I highly doubt she will cook or clean, so it will be another person for me to cook for, clean up after, and take care of while my husband is at work. Now, he's saying that we don't know how much longer she'll be around, which I don't think is a fair statement. His mother is 54 with a little bit of health issues, and my mom is 56, and she just beat stage 4 cancer with a prognosis of 6 months. He states that he wants this to be her first grandchild that she has a relationship with. She has 4 other grandchildren, and she has never met them or tried to be in their lives. She says that she wants to do better and be different, but after her multiple times, including at my wedding, of making everything about her and inconveniencing everyone for her needs, I am skeptical that this would be any different, especially because my husband's birthday was last week, and she didn't even call him, claiming that her phone was acting up. I told my husband it's not my fault that she doesn't drive, and that we will have to drive her everywhere, and that shouldn't make it so that she has to stay for days instead of visiting during the day. I mean, she only lives 30 minutes away. I also told him that if he wants her there to help him, then that's perfectly fine, but he shouldn't bring her with the expectation that I will be with her 8 to 10 hours a day without him. If he wants her support and wants to spend time with her, that is completely up to him. Like, I don't expect to spend 8 hours a day with my mom when she's staying over. If he wants her to come after the first few weeks, once we have a routine, I mean, that would be fine. But during the first few weeks, she's going to be too overbearing. He's saying that he could never tell his mom that my mom stayed the first week because that would hurt her feelings. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? So in my opinion, I don't think you're in the wrong here. Like, for starters, it would make sense for your mom to be there because you are a lot more familiar with your mom and you know for a fact that she's gonna help out. Like, you've spent a lifetime around your mom, so you know that she's gonna be a good person to help take care of your child. But in contrast, it sounds like your husband's mom is not a good person. She was not there for her kids when they were small, and it sounds like that behavior has carried over into her being a grandmother as well. And that really is unfortunate, but it's also a good sign of how she's gonna act for 3 to 4 days in your house. And I think the original poster also has it right. You're not saying that he can't see his mom, but maybe just not right now, especially when you're trying to get a routine down. Like, if your mom is not gonna help get that established, why on earth would she be around? Like, at that point, it would almost be better for her to come back maybe in like a month or something like that. And sure, you don't want to offend your mom or anything like that, but like, seriously, you need to look at this honestly and be like, yeah, your mom is probably not gonna help out. So in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk. I think you're well within your right to decide who you want to stay with, and if that does not include your husband's mom, then that honestly is just the way it's gotta be. Am I the jerk for telling my friend's wife about his April Fool's joke that I feel was going way too far and was something that absolutely should not have happened? Because right now, my friend says that I threw him under the bus, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 35-year-old male, and I've been friends with my friend Jake since 2006. He met his wife Fiona around the same time, and they started dating a few years later. They got married a few years after that and have some children. And it's safe to say that at this time, they are going through a rough patch. Also, as a side note, Jake and Fiona are not their real names. After COVID hit, something happened to Jake and he changed a lot. He became standoffish, quit taking care of himself, meaning that he wouldn't shower or brush his teeth for weeks. He developed an excessive eating habit and removed himself from his family life to living in a spare bedroom, all because of his smell. And this is where he spent all his time playing video games, watching anime, and doom scrolling online. He quit taking care of the house, didn't help out at all with any chores or the children, and only contributed financially to the house. This had a huge impact on their marriage. And although they have tried to work it out, I mean, he has gotten better, but it's still not back to pre-COVID times, maybe like 40 to 50% there. His progress just doesn't look like it's going to last. So anyways, this is where the issue comes in. Fiona wants a divorce. She's been wanting one for over a year now, but is not able to financially take care of the kids by herself. So as a result, they still reside in the same house. On the other hand, Jake won't do the divorce and is contesting it. They don't do anything relationship related and basically just co-parent. Well, this is when Jake told me about his April Fool's joke. He basically drafted fake divorce papers that look real all the way until you get to the end, and the last line would say something like effective as of April Fool's, and then a line would state that it's not a legal document. Now, I of course said no. Even though the divorce is not a big deal to him, it is a huge deal to his wife, and in my eyes, it would be him basically waving it in her face. He sees this just as a joke, which is what the day is for. Now, if they weren't where they are right now in their relationship, I would have said go for it, but considering the issues, it's a definite no. I didn't feel comfortable with this, so I straight up told his wife all about it, and she was not cool with it, and she ended up blowing up on Jake about it. He said he wasn't going to do it, and was just shooting the idea around, but she ended up finding the papers in the printer's save history. He now feels betrayed that I would throw him under the bus for someone who is not even a friend. I feel it was super narcissistic of him to even try to pull this joke off, which is what I told him when he originally brought it up too, by the way, and that he was gonna terrorize his wife for a joke. Our mutual friends are split, with detractors saying that I jumped too far ahead and I started something that may not even happen happen, meaning that they think he could have changed his mind, while my other half say that regardless of whether it actually happened, there's no way it should have ever even been an option. I mean, he was just gonna get her hopes up and then crush them at a chance for a laugh at her expense. And I feel it was better to end it before it even gets a chance to happen. So am I in the wrong in this situation? Because I honestly don't know what to do. No, you are not the jerk. I think Jake absolutely was gonna try and pull off this joke, and you were the last line of defense to try and save Fiona from the embarrassment. Like, first of all, Jake sounds like a slob. He sounds like an absolute piece of garbage, both literally and figuratively. Like, this guy smells so bad that he has to live in a separate room away from his family, who, by the way, he's completely abandoned. Like, there literally is no excuse for this guy, and it is truly disgusting that he would try to plan something like this out, especially considering that he's the problem in this relationship. So no, I don't think you're the jerk at all. If I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing, because it is pretty obvious that Fiona deserves way better than this, because Jake in this story is an absolute loser, and there is no excuse for him wanting to prank his wife in this way. My ex-mother's new boyfriend claims that me and my husband haven't been suffering enough, and that we're just entitled and we deserve to be treated like garbage, and I'm honestly so glad I moved out of that house. Here's what happened. Years ago, my husband and I were in a situation in which we were both in college full-time, we were working and paying for our own apartment. Now, it certainly wasn't a nice apartment, but we were very poor college students, so we just made it work. Over time, the place got more sketchy. The police started coming around, and we had a neighbor in the apartment next to us who was the very definition of trailer trash. She did substances, she had loud parties all the time, she sat outside on the steps eating her weight in cheese balls, and the list just goes on and on. She also had a kid with ADHD, and he was an extreme nuisance. He would run around screaming and slamming doors and all this other stuff. She very obviously neglected him, as she let him run amok around the apartment complex. It was so bad that we were kept up all night with the noise, and it became difficult for us to study. We couldn't afford to move, and the apartment complex wasn't allowed to evict this woman because her son had special needs. At around the same time, my Karen ex-mother's second marriage was failing. My husband and I were out one day, and we came back to our apartment to find her sitting in our living room crying. And yes, before you ask, she had a key to the apartment. She explained to us that her husband had asked her for a divorce. She also couldn't afford a place on her own, so she proposed that my husband and I rent a place together with her. She had custody of my younger sister, who was a minor at the time, and she said it would be a 70-30 kind of thing, where she would pay for the majority of the rent and utilities, since she had to have 2 of the bedrooms, and she wanted to help relieve some of the burden that we were facing. Now, my husband and I were both so eager to get out of our current living situation that we went ahead and agreed with the plan. And trust me, this was a huge mistake. We paid her the rent that she asked for, but she kept increasing it and asking for more over time. Now, did I mention that she had a bad habit of getting herself into credit card debt, or even her gambling addiction? Because that was an awful nightmare as well. Eventually, she started dating again, and things between she and I were taking a turn for the worse during this time. Before I even met this guy, she had been complaining about living with my husband and I, so he already had it out for us. Since she started to gradually increase her demands for more rent money from us, we were paying for over half of the rent and utilities by the time we left. She also constantly threatened to kick us out, and there were more incidents that blew our minds, like her throwing a tape dispenser at my head, or even throwing chairs and calling me names, where she would have violent outbursts and break glasses. I wasn't happy about the situation, and neither was my husband, so we made a deposit on our apartment in another city, and we had to take out student loans to do this, but we needed a more stable living situation because we were getting ready to do our final semesters. Well, when we did this made her panic, because she couldn't afford for the place that we were staying in on her income alone. She complained to her new boyfriend, and the guy had the audacity to say that they haven't suffered enough, referring to my husband and I. I guess he thought that we were entitled because we didn't like being treated like that. Those words have stayed with me over a decade later. I'm not mad about it or anything like that. I just think it's deeply disturbing and sick. Unfortunately, this is not an uncommon mentality. I'm curious though, what does suffering enough look like for these sick jerks? More importantly, why do they need us to suffer and struggle? I mean, this is probably the first generation of people to ever want their kids to be worse off than themselves. It's also interesting to me because my ex-mother got to live at home rent-free while she was in college. She only worked during the summer so she could pay off her tuition, and she left school debt-free and never had to worry about paying her own rent or buying her her own food. I've already done more work and worked harder than her, but I guess apparently I haven't suffered enough. And for those who don't know, working 2 jobs year-round to make ends meet, all while attending college full-time, is extremely stressful. Yeah, that sounds like an awful living situation. She clearly was taking advantage of your kindness and then had the audacity to try and treat you like garbage and be like, oh, I need more money. Like, that really is not fair, and honestly, I don't blame you for getting upset and saying, no, we gotta leave. Because that living situation sounded awful, and it was clear that she was definitely taking advantage of you. Am I the jerk for telling my friend that her kid has no manners after he throws my wife's wedding ring out the window into our backyard? Here's what happened. A few of my friends came over to our house for a get-together lunch, and a few of them have kids and brought them along. One of my friends, who we will call Nora, has a 4-year-old son that is notorious for being naughty. He doesn't get along with other kids and is a constant source of crying and screaming. Nora brought her son over, and he said he wanted to take a nap, so I showed Nora the guest room and told her to make herself comfortable. Nora then came downstairs for a while and we hung out. Now, around 40 minutes later, this kid came back down and was smiling like crazy. And when I look at him, he had my wife's wedding ring. My wife is a doctor and doesn't take her ring to work, so she leaves it on our nightstand, meaning that this kid clearly had gone into our bedroom. I told Nora that I'd like him to give the ring back, but Nora said that he would eventually just get bored with it and that I need to relax. A few minutes later, I asked this kid to please give me the ring back. Well, this seemed to trigger something in this kid because he ran to the window and threw the ring out in our spacious backyard. Now, I got really mad. My wife adores her ring, and I had it custom made with many little touches. It was extra special because it resembles a ring in her Nana's family, which she couldn't have because she married a woman. So after all that, I told Nora that her son had no manners and she needed to do something about him. Like maybe take him to a doctor because this is not healthy kid behavior. Well, she got very upset and then she left, and the other guests started leaving too. My wife and I spent the entire evening looking for it, but we couldn't find it. And right now I am a crying mess. My wife keeps saying that it's nothing, but I know how much she loves that ring. Despite all this, every mom in our friend group is calling me a jerk for taking things too far with Nora and her son. So am I in the wrong in this situation? What should I do? Honestly, all of your friends in your friend group should be on their hands and knees looking for that custom ring. The fact that any of them left without helping you out is enough proof, in my opinion, that these people are not your friends. Because if one of my friends had their stupid kid throw a ring out the window and I knew my other friends were very upset about it, I would take the friend side with the ring and be like, what in the world is wrong with your kid? In this scenario, Nora absolutely should have gone to that kid and been like, what are you doing? Give me back that ring. Instead of being like, oh, he'll get bored of it, just calm down. So no, you are definitely not the jerk. You had every right to get upset, and anybody taking your friend's side with her stupid kid, in my opinion, are not real friends in the slightest. An entitled man throws a temper tantrum when I won't let him break our health code at our restaurant. He even goes as far as throwing a metal chair over our patio, nearly taking out 2 women in the process. And to this day, I am still blown away by this man's entitlement. Here's what happened. So this happened several years ago during my tenure as a server at a restaurant in an area that has lots of tourists. I have an entire smorgasbord of wild stories, along with your average restaurant no one matured past high school work environment. Without getting too specific about where I was, the restaurant was somewhat dog-themed in the name, as well as in 2 of the decorations, but outside of that, it was largely just a pub-style restaurant. But with our name, most folks expected us to be a dog-friendly establishment. Unfortunately, shortly before I started working there, the health department had begun to crack down on restaurants in the area for allowing dogs in, which was against the health code. As such, in an effort to live up to our name, management chucked off an arm and a leg to get permission to have a dog-friendly section on the patio. Part of the permission came with several rules, such as dogs can't sit in chairs or on tables, dogs must be on their leash or in a carriage, dogs must have separate entrances and exits, stuff like that. If you sit down and think about it, it does make sense, and it's there to protect people who have an allergy or might have a phobia or any other reason to avoid a dog in public. So the following story happened shortly before my 20th birthday in the middle of summer. It was cloudy, it was humid, bugs were flying, and absolutely no one wanted to sit on the patio. I was the hostess that day, and I felt really bad for my patio server who wasn't getting any business. That is until our middle-aged entitled Karen appears to make things worse. She says to me, "Hi, my husband and I have a dog and we were hoping to sit on the patio." I look look at her and I say, great, just give me a second and I'll get you set up in the dog-friendly section. I collect their menus and leave the entitled Karen outside to find her husband, who is the entitled Kevin of this story, along with a cute elderly beagle already sitting in the dog-free section. For the record, all the patio tables had little signs on them denoting them as dog-friendly or dog-free, just to make it easy on people. So this entitled Kevin, had he been using his eyes, could have easily solved our first encounter before it happened. Me, in the chippiest customer service voice, said, "Hi there, sir. Just so you know, you are in the dog-free section right now, but if you move over just one table, you will be in the dog-friendly section and we can get you started." This entitled Kevin looks up from his phone and his dark, beady eyes meet mine. He says to me in a seething tone, "Are you serious?" Now, at this point, I'm a bit taken back by the hostility at such a basic request, but I'm no novice to awful customers. I repeat the rules and explain that it's due to the restaurant needing to follow the health code. He continues to protest, and his wife jumps in and starts pleading that it's just one table, why don't we just move? And now I feel even worse for her. Finally, he throws his hands up in the air and shouts out loud, "Fine, but if my dog gets hit by a car, are you the one that I'm gonna sue?" Now, for some context, the dog-friendly section was adjacent to the sidewalk, which was adjacent to the road. So if you were going to be hit by a car, it was technically the most likely spot, but it also had never happened in the restaurant's multi-decade lifespan. At this point, my irritation meter is firmly in the red, as I realize he's one of those entitled jerks, the one who spit and threaten when they don't get their way. But I shoot an even smile and I say to him, "That's probably a question for my manager." This entitled Kevin looks at me and says, "Yeah, or your attorney." He really thinks that he got me with that zinger as I'm sitting him down in the dog-friendly section, but really, I'm just hiding my laughter, because these are the most pathetic kinds of people we serve. I then just warn his server that he's a jerk, and I go on with my day. I later bring out a bowl of water for the dog because it's hot and gross, and the poor thing shouldn't be dehydrated. It was standard practice for us to bring dogs water while their owners ate. I set it down, and this guy immediately starts screaming at me, "Is that tap water or bottled water?" Now, me fighting every urge to deadpan, I say to him, "It's tap water, sir. Would you like me to go out and buy bottled water?" At this point, the dog begins drinking it, and the entitled Kevin slams his hand down on the table and starts to shout even more, "Well, it's too late now. Let's hope it's not poisoned." Now, the guy has me wondering if his dog is up to date on its shots, or if he's an anti-vaxxer. His server told me later on that he poured out the water, and I have no clue if she was referring to his water or his dog's water, but he had loudly complained that there were bugs in it. Now, I'd like to remind you, dear reader, that it was a disgustingly humid, muggy summer day, and this man decided to eat outside. While I do understand the initial revulsion at seeing a bug in your meal or drink, he was in the bug's world, dear reader, not ours, and we have no control over that. But regardless, we still replaced his water. About 20 minutes later, his entree is ordered. He and his wife are eating an appetizer, the dog is chilling, and some other mad soul walks inside and asks to sit on the patio. And just to be petty, I put him in the chair the entitled Kevin had originally commandeered. But then I look over. The entitled Kevin had his beagle in his lap while he was eating his food. If you remember from earlier when I was explaining some of the mandates we got from the health department, one of them was that dogs can't sit in chairs or on tables. And while some of you might contest it, the dog being in his lap constituted being in a chair in the health department's eyes. Now, I don't want to deal with this, but I knew that between me and his server, on the 1 in a million chance that a health official just happened to walk by and see us breaking the rules, one of us would get thrown under the bus. So as the entitled Karen goes inside to order a drink from the bar, I slap on my customer service voice and I stroll over to the table. I look at this man and I say, "Hi, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I need to tell you that it's unfortunately against the health code for your dog to be in the chair with you." The entitled Kevin goes silent for a few moments, just sitting there and simmering. Then he says to me, "Show me the health code." I look at him and I say, "Excuse me?" He responds by saying, "I'm not doing anything else unless you show me the health code." At this point, my patience is wafer thin. This man is finding ways to push all the most annoying buttons rather than just following a basic rule and letting all of us go on about our days. Rather than continuing with him and risk losing my temper, I go back inside to cool down and find a manager. I find one, we go to the office, and she prints out the list of rules emailed to us by the health department. Then she holds up the paper to me and says the following: "Now this can go one of two ways. I can take this down to him and you never have to see him again, or you can take this down to him and get that smug satisfaction feeling of telling a jerk that you were right." Now this is where I may have gone wrong, dear readers. For you see, I really didn't want to see this man ever again. His beady black eyes, eyes, his thin, greased black hair, his rubbery white skin, the man looked like death himself. Stoking that fire to satiate my ego could go terribly wrong. And trust me, that's a bit of foreshadowing. But on the other hand, I really wanted that smug, satisfied feeling of telling a jerk that I was right. I mean, what can I say? I wasn't even 20 years old. Mustering my courage, I take the paper, and as I walk back outside, I internally hype myself up until I'm strutting over to the entitled Kevin's table, and it's then that I hand him the paper. I look at him and I say, "Hi sir, here's the health code, as you requested. As you can see here, it says we cannot allow dogs to sit in the chairs or we get a massive fine." The entitled Kevin takes the paper and peers down to the rules carefully, then analyzes the whole paper as if looking for some kind of loophole. But he must not have found one, because instead, he throws the paper on the ground and says to me, "You can shove that paper right up your butt." Only he didn't say butt, if you know what I mean. This man finally gave me a reason to drop the customer service voice, which for the record is a very light and high-pitched voice, and my normal talking voice is surprisingly deep and not as joyful. So I glared down at this entitled Kevin, I drop to my normal vocal register, and then I growl at him. I say to him, "Sir, put the dog on the ground or you can leave." Now this startled him at first, but he, being a man with an attorney, and me being a short little waitress working for pennies after all, regathers himself rather quickly. He scoops up his dog in his arms, stands up, then takes his heavy metal chair and flings it behind him. It goes under our railing and nearly strikes two random women walking by. And then, dear reader, the pièce de résistance. He sits down on the ground with his dog in his lap. Now at this point, I've seen a lot in my service industry career. I can handle someone throwing a temper tantrum, but I can't handle someone throwing a chair. Luckily, the two women he'd nearly assaulted knew exactly what to do. They leer over him from behind the railing and begin screaming. They go full Karen for justice mode on this guy's butt. The more they screamed, the more he shrank, and we had attracted a small crowd of attention. Then they turn their gaze upon me. They say to me, "Oh my gosh, sweetie, are you okay? You know we're from Brooklyn and even we find this appalling." Suddenly, I snap back to reality and realize I'd been rescued. I laugh and join the conversation with the women, with the pouting man between us. I not so subtly bemoan the immaturity and entitledness I saw on a daily basis, and overall they were very sweet. Finally, the server comes back with the entitled Karen wife in tow. She had been inside this whole time, completely unaware of her husband's outburst. She looks utterly horrified and ashamed. Their server lets me know the manager is on their way immediately. We file inside and all the employees crowd around a nearby window to watch as our manager goes out. The entitled Kevin keeps sticking his finger in her face, speaking through gritted teeth, looking like he's about to pop a vessel. All the while, his wife is mortified, and our manager is just completely bored. Finally, after some back and forth, he finally leaves. My manager comes back inside and tells us, okay, he called me many names and told me to get lost, but if he ever comes back, we are definitely calling the police. And honestly, I'm still blown away by this guy's entitlement. Wow, that's a crazy situation to be stuck in. The second that guy threw that metal chair across the patio is the second I would have called the police right away. Like, that's definitely not gonna happen, and I just would not put up with that. But overall, good for you for handling this so well. Like, I really do think that you handled this perfectly and like a complete professional, because that guy was acting insane, and you did not deserve that kind of treatment in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not wanting to help my younger sister financially? All because she and her husband are definitely not good with money, because right now they're calling me a jerk for saying no, and at this point I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my sister is in her late 30s, she's married, has no kids, and has 2 previous bankruptcies. Her and her husband both work in banking and made a good living that they left to chase the real estate money. In 2021, our parents let them know how big of a mistake we all thought this was going to be. I mean, everyone saw what was coming. They worked for a couple of years under one realtor, then buying one out last year, and they are now financially in trouble as they aren't moving homes. We have always been very supportive of her, despite her being in her mid-30s, almost losing her house twice, almost having her car repossessed, and really only wants to be a part of the family when she needs money. I've always been fortunate with my career and my husband with his. So when she comes to me, I always oblige, but I just don't want to this time. Now, here's a solid example of how it goes when I lend her money. 15 years ago, when they were losing their home in 2009, after they both lost their jobs due to the housing crash, my husband loaned them $50,000 to be repaid as they could, which first and foremost foremost was absolutely our fault. But we never got anything but the initial thank you for saving us. And only then, 10 years later, did we get the notion of, oh yay, we finally paid you off. It was as if we owed them this money, and it was our honor to lend that cash to them free of charge and at a repayment plan that was comfy for them. Later on, we found out that our parents lent them a lot of money that they haven't paid a single cent towards. Last Christmas, after not seeing them for 5 years, and their arrival being somewhat of a surprise, the conversation moved towards real estate. Things got a little heated when our father asked them about the market and how that was affecting them. On cue, they blamed everyone else but themselves on how they were, get this, blindsided. And there were just huge eye rolls all around. Our father ended the conversation by saying, well, just don't come to your mom or I or your family if you need money again. And as a note, I didn't tell them that I loaned them money previously. Fast forward, and last week, my sister called me out of the blue and let me know that due to everyone else's fault but her own, despite the fact that it's always been her fault, they simply can't make the numbers work and they could use a lift. Now, when she said this, I was speechless, but I should have known that it was a money call. When she finally asked if she could borrow some money again, I just replied by saying that's not a good idea. Now, I should have said like 1,000 other things, but that's all I could muster up. I expanded to tell her that it's not a good investment for us because of her track record with us and the banks, and I asked why she ignored all of us throughout this real estate journey. As she hung up, she said to me, you and your husband really are jerks. So honestly, are we the jerks? We have the money, and she is family, and she did repay us previously, but I just don't feel like I owe her anything. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk. It really sounds like your sister's just trying to get free money out of you. And it took her 10 years to pay you back $50,000? Like, I understand that's a lot of money, but that's also a long time to pay you back. And based on her attitude towards other family members, like, I would be hesitant to lend her any money too if I was in your shoes. It doesn't sound like she's super reliable, and it doesn't seem like she takes responsibility for anything that she does, and only like blames the people around her all the time. And she's had 2 bankruptcies? Like, come on. That is really sketchy, and personally, I would not want to give any money towards that kind of person. So no, you are definitely not the jerk, and I personally don't blame you for being hesitant. My entitled parents spent my grandmother's money while she was incapacitated, choosing to buy a $50,000 car instead of using it on something meaningful for my grandmother. And to this day, I still feel angry about it, and I don't know if I'm the jerk in that regard. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my grandmother has been gone for almost 2 months, and it's just destroying me. I was extremely close to her, and she was honestly the best grandmother and the best person anyone could ever ask for. She would literally give anyone the shirt off her back, and she always offered to give me money, even though 9 times out of 10, I would turn it down. Unfortunately, near Thanksgiving of last year, her health took a nosedive, and she was unable to walk. Then she got pneumonia, which left her incapacitated. It was heartbreaking seeing her go from an active woman who would walk up to 2 times a day, down to being bedridden and suffering. My mom, who is obviously a Karen, is completely different from my grandmother. She is extremely spoiled and very selfish. She was basically given everything she has in life by my grandparents and father. She sits there and wastes her day in front of the computer or the television, and it's so aggravating. And she always treated my grandmother like trash. She would always yell at her over dumb things, and my grandmother would even go out of her way to clean my parents' home. And the ungrateful jerks would just yell at her because she put a few things out of place. And anytime my grandmother would ask me for anything, my mom scoffed and would take an attitude with her. It got to the point where my grandmother stopped visiting my parents and would only do so when I came to visit. She would ask her friends and neighbor to help her instead of my mom because she always got berated by her. So when my grandmother's health started taking a turn for the worst, my parents gained control of her finances and became the power of attorney, which is a common thing. But what they did next was very insatiable, and I don't know if I can ever forgive them for this. While my grandmother was passing away in the nursing home, they decided to use her money to purchase themselves a brand new car. They spent well over $50,000 on the car. They told me that they only did what the lawyer asked them to do, and they were afraid that since my grandmother's nursing home costs would be astronomical, that the state was going to take her money. So they feel like they saved her estate by doing this. I don't know if I'm being petty by being mad about it, but I feel that was so selfish of them. I told my mother-in-law about this and she said she was advised to do the same thing, except she spent the money on stuff she needed for the nursing home and the funeral cost, but not on a car. So honestly, am I the jerk for being upset about this, or do I have every right to be mad? Because right now, I seriously don't know what to do. I think you're completely justified for being upset with your parents, because clearly they took advantage of your grandmother just to get $50,000 out of her. Like, they didn't use any of that money correctly when she passed away, and they clearly just used that for a car instead of, I don't know, nursing home costs and funeral costs. Like, it sounds like your mother-in-law had that figured out, but your parents clearly just were super spoiled. So I'm honestly so sorry that your parents acted like that towards your grandmother, because it sounds like your grandmother really was a good person, but at least you now know moving forward the type of people they're gonna be. Because clearly, if money's involved, then the worst aspects of these people are definitely gonna come out. Am I the jerk for not telling my mom and her husband that I was planning on graduating early? Because right now they are very upset with me, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I'm a 15-year-old female, and I was forced to move away from everything that I knew, all because my mom married a man, and he forced us to move so he could be closer to his family, but we had to be separated from mine. The first day I went to my new school, I just knew it was gonna be a messed up year because I got in trouble the first day that I went there. Some people were nice to me and told me that if I wasn't happy, I should try to graduate early, and that's honestly what I did. I went to my counselor and she got me set up, and I'm now taking all my junior classes in hopes of graduating early. Now, here's the thing. I did not tell my mom or her husband about this, as I've been struggling to find a balance between my actual work and my online classes, as I started late in the semester and my classes are due on May 17th, so I am kind of behind. But with this program that I'm a part of, I kind of find some of the answers on the internet, so it's been getting a lot easier for me. The problem is that my mom's husband's son, who's 17, is graduating this year, and they were talking about how the house was going to be empty when he's gone, but then they were also joking around saying that at least they had me for another 2 years, and I told them that 2 years was crazy because I was graduating next year. They asked me what I meant by that, and I told them that I was graduating early as I was taking more junior classes online, and I was planning on taking the other half during the summer. They then got upset with me and asked me why I never told them, and I just said they never asked me about it and I didn't think it was a big deal. I told them that my mom's husband's son already knew, so it's not like it was a secret. I just verbally didn't say anything. I told them that I don't understand why they're so upset because they know now, and they would have found out soon when I started doing it over the summer as well. My mom told me that she was hurt that I wanted to get away from her so quickly, and I told her that I wasn't doing that to get away from her, but instead I was doing that so I could be closer to my friends and family as I really miss them. My mom told me that she knows I didn't want to move, but she feels hurt knowing that I would be gone sooner than she anticipated. My mom's husband is upset with me too and genuinely confused. They're acting like I was keeping this huge secret from them when it honestly wasn't that deep. So honestly, am I the jerk for keeping this from my family? Because honestly, at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Honestly, I don't think this really was a secret, to be completely honest, but I think you were slowly getting to the point where you could tell them exactly what you have planned for your education, which by the way, in my opinion, is completely up to you. If you want to graduate early and get out of this awful school that treats you like garbage, then go for it. Like, I wouldn't want to be at a school that treated me like that, because for starters, you don't like living there, and it doesn't sound like everybody in that school is really treating you with respect. So I definitely do not think you're the jerk at all. And seriously, like, so what if you graduate early? I've known plenty of people in my life who've gotten out of high school earlier than what other people have done, and things have worked out just fine. It's not like they were behind in life in any kind of way, and if anything, they were just able to start college sooner. And after all, they're the ones that uprooted your life and literally moved you away from your original high school to a place where you not only don't know anybody, but you also have no connection here. Like, you have no friends to look to, and that honestly is not fair. So I completely understand where you're coming from. I don't think you're the jerk, and honestly, the fact that your mom and her husband are getting upset, in my opinion, is really weird. My entitled mother-in-law and sister-in-law demand that my fiance dump me, all because I got into a car accident, claiming that my fiance shouldn't be forced to take care of me for the rest of my life, and that she would live a better life away from somebody with such injuries. But after my fiance chewed them out and put them in their place, I busted up laughing, causing them to hate me entirely and want nothing to do with me. So now I'm questioning whether I'm the jerk for laughing at them after they got put in their place, because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I'm a 27-year-old male and I'm getting married to my fiance later this year. She is an incredible woman and I'm the luckiest man alive to have her in my life. Unfortunately, she comes attached to a very very entitled and self-absorbed family. I genuinely don't know how my fiance ended up as amazing as she is with these people around. The main players in this conflict are my mother-in-law and sister-in-law to be. When my fiance and I announced our engagement last year, my sister-in-law had a complete breakdown, throwing a full tantrum that she deserved to get married first and my fiance should be forced to wait. Now, I was so confused by this reaction, but my fiance just looked bored, which confused me even more. Apparently, her sister does this a lot when she feels she deserves something more than my fiance, and my mother-in-law took my sister-in-law's side, saying that dating wasn't as easy for her. My fiance always tells them off for being annoying and ridiculous, and they hate it, which is always funny to me. So with that bit of background out of the way, here's where I might need some help. 3 weeks ago, I got into a nasty car crash, and my left leg is broken in multiple places. The doctors say I'll likely have a permanent limp even after I heal because of how bad the injury is, and I might even need a cane. My fiance is an absolute angel and has been by my side every step of the way. I'm going to need a couple different surgeries and some serious physical therapy before I can properly walk again, and she's been pushing my wheelchair since I got home. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law stopped by yesterday, and that's where all the trouble is. My sister-in-law suddenly asked my fiance when she would be leaving me, and she said this flat out while I was still in the room. My mother-in-law also chimed in saying a wheelchair or a cane would look horrible in wedding pictures, so it would be best for her to cancel and leave. And when she said this, I was completely horrified. Now, I didn't even get to open my mouth before my fiance went absolutely ballistic at her mom and sister. She told them that they were delusional if they believed that she was that shallow. She kicked them out almost immediately, saying that she was done and over their garbage. I mean, they both looked like they sucked on extra sour lemons, and I couldn't help but laugh at their expressions. And this was apparently what did it for them, and they both huffed off, still insisting they were just looking out for my fiance. I laughed for a couple of minutes before finally calming down. My fiance just looked so exhausted, so we had some cheer-up snuggles. I've been getting messages from my sister-in-law all day saying that me laughing at them wanting my fiance to not have to spend the rest of her life looking after me was completely uncalled for, and I'm just a jerk for that. She makes it sound like I'm completely paralyzed and that I'll need 24/7 care until I pass away. But I don't think I did anything wrong. So honestly, am I the jerk for laughing at them in the way that I did? Because at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Before we go any further, the original poster actually has an update. Here's what they had to say about the situation at hand. Okay, so this thing got a lot more attention than I thought it would, considering how dumb the whole situation is. But actually, I'm glad it did, because I've been reading the comments with my fiance, and we're both seeing how messed up her mom and sister's behavior actually is. She said she hadn't even thought about going no contact since she was just so used to their garbage, but now we're really talking about making that happen. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law have also officially been uninvited from the wedding, which they did not take well, especially my mother-in-law. My sister-in-law is blocked on my phone now, but her and my mother-in-law still message my fiance. It's a little hard for her to block them completely just yet, but we will keep working on it. And for those who have asked where the father-in-law is during all of this, I honestly don't actually know. He divorced his wife a long time ago and doesn't have contact with her or his daughters anymore. My fiance says that she doesn't care or miss him because he was just as bad as her mom and sister. Now, lastly, for those asking, yes, I absolutely did spoil my fiance later after they left. I already mentioned Snuggles, but we also got her favorite takeout and binged this new show that she's been wanting to check out. So with all things considered, everything is starting to go pretty well. Wow, the mother-in-law and sister-in-law in this story are so out of line. Like, they seriously went up to this fiance and said, you need to dump this guy right now. And here you are sitting in the room, like, listening to all this. Like, I can't imagine being talked to like that, especially as if I'm not in the room. But my God, it sounds like your fiance is awesome. She had your back almost immediately. Before you even had a chance to respond, she had that on lock and absolutely knew exactly what she was gonna say. So hopefully these people don't play a big role in your life, because seriously, they sound incredibly toxic. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. I am so sick of entitled people coming into my coffee shop only to then be ignorant to how we handle our orders. And I'm honestly so sick of it that I now seriously don't know what to do. So I work at a cafe where we sell coffee as well as bagels and pastries. We get quite busy as we are a popular location, and sometimes whoever is on the bar will be over a dozen drinks deep. We try to work as quickly as possible to reduce reduce wait times, but obviously things can happen. Well, I have an entitled couple who come in frequently, and they give me the same issues every single time. They will clearly see a long line of drinks lined up to be made, and I have clearly told them in the past that there's quite a few ahead of you, but if you keep your ears open, you will hear us call out your drinks, or I'll flag you down myself. And despite the fact that they have just ordered only 2 minutes ago, they will come up to the bar and say to me, "Is this my mocha?" But of course, it's definitely not. I loudly and clearly say that this is a different drink. They'll then come up to the bar and just stare hard at whoever is making drinks and interrupt the workflow to say, "I'm waiting for my mocha." And I think to myself, yes, that's wonderful, but I have yet to call that out. I haven't once said mocha, and you're still in line. And the kicker is, once I finally call their drinks out, they are nowhere to be found, or they're just not paying attention. While we're quite literally yelling that their drinks are ready, and we're not doing it in a rude way, they're just staring into space while their lattes sit and get cold or lose their foam. When they finally arrive, they are genuinely so surprised that their drinks are now cold. But like, I'm not a waitress and I don't do table service. Come to the bar if you want to get your drink. I don't have time to hand deliver your stuff to your table. They simply don't listen. I've had a whole party at a previous cafe that I worked at come up to order, and one person would say, "What's the soup of the day?" But then I would say, "Unfortunately, we do not offer soup." Then I swear to God, the entire party one by one keeps asking me what soup we have, and it all just feels like I'm getting messed with. Having to repeat quite literally half a dozen times that we don't have soup because nobody is listening to me or acknowledging the info I give them is honestly insane. If I have to call out one more drink, only to then be met with a confused, blank, lead poisoning stare, I'm honestly gonna lose it. And I'm sure that anyone who's worked a service industry job can definitely relate. Yeah, I can't stand people who act like this. They very clearly are trying to cause problems and like get ahead of the line, but then when their stuff is actually ready, they are literally nowhere to be seen. Like they drop off the face of the map and they're just off somewhere else doing who knows what. And then they get upset that their stuff is cold, but it's like, dude, I called out your order like 5 times. Where were you? And the thing is, I'm sure these people probably move like super fast. Like they know how to make these drinks and get it ready properly in probably a short amount of time. But expecting it right after you order it is insane. Like that doesn't make any sense, and you're not helping anybody by acting that way. So yes, I totally relate with what you're saying, and I totally understand why you're frustrated. Because acting like this is so out of touch, and it is so frustrating to have to put up with it. Am I the jerk for refusing to take part in the joint baby shower that my aunt strongly wants to throw for me and my 2 half-sisters? Because I'm convinced that this will only cause problems. Here's what happened. I'm a 26-year-old female and I'm pregnant, and so is my 2 half-sisters who are 27 and 29. Our shared aunt asked each of us individually if she could host a baby shower for us. My 2 half-sisters said yes, and they only said yes thinking it was just the 2 of them. My aunt told me that it was going to be a surprise that all 3 of us would be the guests of honor. I asked her why she would surprise them like that, and she said it's because they never get to see me and haven't seen me at all since I became pregnant. So she felt it would be amazing for 3 sisters getting pregnant at the same time. And since we would be due at around the same time, we should have a joint shower. Now, for some background, my half-sisters and I share a dad. He and their mom were on and off again, and during an off period while she was pregnant with the youngest of my half-sisters, he met my mom. He ended up marrying my mom super fast, and then a couple of months later, I was on the way. My half-sister's mom also married around that time, and they live with their mom and stepdad most of the time and spent every weekend with me and my parents. Now, we were not close growing up. My dad had a good relationship with them, and they adored him, but they never wanted me around. Because we were so close in age, we were often put together and people assumed that we were close. They would leave me behind, ignore me, and act like I wasn't even there. They acknowledged their half-siblings born through their mom as siblings, but I was never even acknowledged as a half-sibling. If we were around dad, maybe, but definitely not when anyone else was around. Family vacations used to suck because we would end up sharing a room, and they would tell me they didn't like me or want me in the room with them. They would say I ruined their sister time. Now, nothing has changed between us as adults. My dad is disabled from a terminal illness, and that meant casually being in the same place has decreased a lot. It hasn't gone unnoticed by the extended family, and most of them accepted that this is something my half-sisters want. But my aunt seems to ignore the fact that it's a choice that they made, and not something that is due to clashing schedules or something like that. So she came up with this idea of the baby shower. I explained why this was a bad idea, and I told her very clearly they do not want me in their lives, and they would not have me on the guest list, let alone share the day with me in any kind of way. She told me that I was being ridiculous and they would love it. So I told her that I would not take part in this. She told me it would be fun, and when I still refused, she told me I should be thankful that she wants to do this for me. I asked her why she didn't tell the whole truth then and see exactly what they say, but she told me that I'm being ungrateful and that I'm trying to ruin the surprise. So am I the jerk for turning this down? Because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Your aunt is absolutely delusional. It's almost like she's ignoring all the facts sitting right in front of her face. How can she not know that your half-siblings don't like you? They have made that abundantly clear, and it's pretty obvious that they don't want you in their lives. And the fact that your aunt is like, oh, don't be silly, this is gonna be great. Like she is just blatantly ignoring all of your concerns, and she is only making this worse by trying to make this some kind of like weird surprise. But like that is not gonna go over well at all. Because here's the thing, these half-siblings aren't gonna blame the aunt for scheduling this. What's probably gonna happen instead is that these half-siblings are gonna be like, wow, I can't believe she did that. And by she, I'm referring to the original poster. I guarantee you they'll try to take this out on her and try to make it seem like she's the one that planned this. So in my opinion, I think it's a very good idea to back out of this and say, no, I'm not going to participate. Because I do not see this going well in the slightest, especially with your aunt trying to make this some kind of surprise. I like my current job and the people there, but I'm starting to think that it's my time to look elsewhere, all because of the restaurant culture and the payout system. But I seriously feel like I'm at a crossroads, and at this point, I'm very unsure of where to go. Here's what happened. So I started a month and a half ago, and it's my first restaurant job, as I had previously come from a serving job at a nightclub. I like the people there, I like the customers, and I obviously enjoy serving, but I feel like the restaurant vibe just isn't for me. Plus, I definitely clash with a general manager, even though he's okay some of the time. The thing about my previous job and this job that has me considering leaving is the babysitting and go find something to do mentality, plus the major pay cut in tips. At my last job, we were trusted to get our work done when we saw fit and on our own timeline. We didn't have the manager up our butt saying, go empty the trash, go clean the windows, stop standing around. And at my last job, if there were no customers and my bar setup was finished, I could chill out and do pretty much whatever I wanted. When it came to closing, we all just did what needed to be done. We didn't have an assignment list. And if I preferred shutting down the bar and the other girl preferred cleaning the sales floor, then we just did exactly that. If we both preferred to split up evenly, then we did that as well. It was pretty much self-governed by the waitresses, which apparently I really took for granted. At the new job, they just assign us what they want and we have no say. Plus, the side work is much more, and it's much more time-consuming, and the money we make just simply isn't enough to make up for it. Not to mention that it's gross with all the greasy dishes and sauces. Plus, the tip out is ridiculous. Tipping out $5 to my lazy bar back and paying $5 for parking when I made $300 on a Monday seems very minuscule compared to paying out $20 or more when I barely made $120 at the restaurant. I'm already getting tired of waiting 2 weeks for an $800 check when I could have made that in 2 or 3 days at my last job and gotten cash the same night for it. And speaking of cash tips, we never get to keep ours because we have to pay tip out in cash and use our cash as a bank for the change since there are no cash registers. So it's literally impossible to leave with cash in hand. At my last job, I saved up $40,000 in less than 2 years. I made $800 in my first weekend, and I probably made like $70,000 a year easily, but I've been here for over a month and I have nothing to show for it. Plus, the principle of tipping out the bartender so much when they are allowed to stand around and do nothing while we have to take their liquor stock upstairs just doesn't seem fair. The manager will literally sit there and just laugh with the bartender all morning while barking at us servers to take liquor upstairs and clean windows. And the bartender is either talking or playing on their phone. Meanwhile, the manager made a snarky comment at me when I use my phone for the calculator. My boyfriend, who's a restaurant manager, made it a point to tell me that bartenders are above servers. And I just don't like that, especially since I came from a place where we did everything and made the money to compensate for it. So I think the bartenders can at least take their own stock upstairs before opening. I have been eyeballing the bar across the street and actually had applied there before I got hired at the restaurant I'm at now. And after I talked to my server tonight about their mobile toast system, since we don't have the mobiles, he asked where I serve that uses toast, and we got talking about me being interested in working there. I told him I work across the street and that I would love to work there, and he said to check back in a few weeks. I just don't know if I should go for it since it took forever to get my current job, and I do like most of the people there. I just know that that it would be a better fit for me to be in a more laid-back adult environment, somewhere where the managers don't treat their employees as school-age labor mules, where they ask me what I'm doing and then demand that I go clean windows. Because that is something I definitely was used to hearing at high school at a fast food job, but it is not something I ever want to hear when I'm serving. Yeah, the job you're working at right now sounds like they micromanage you a lot. Like, that really must be annoying, especially coming from the job you were just at, because it sounds like your previous job was really like a dream. You were able to get stuff done on your own, you didn't have managers breathing down your neck seeing if you're working hard, and it really did seem like you had a lot of autonomy in what you do. And I've got to be honest, for me, when I'm looking at a job, if I don't have full autonomy to do whatever I need to do to get stuff done, and instead have to check in with a manager for every little thing, then that's like a big red flag that no, I definitely do not want to work there. Because that shows me that they're never going to trust me with anything that I do at that restaurant. They are always going to be on my case even if I do my job perfectly, and it really seems like no matter what you do, it's never going to be good enough. And that's just not fair, especially when you really are doing a good job. So in my opinion, I think you absolutely should go to the bar across the street. It sounds like it would be a better fit for you, and regardless of if you like most of the people at your current job, if they're not paying you the rate that you deserve, then in my opinion, I think it's time to chase the money and go somewhere where you definitely will be happy. Would I be the jerk if I called out my parents for their seemingly double standards when it comes to me and their religion? Because right now I am very frustrated, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I want to start off by saying that this has been a challenging situation. To preface this, I am the only girl of my 4 siblings. I'm 27 years old and I have 2 older brothers who are 39 and 35, and I have 1 younger brother who's 27. While my older brothers are 11 and 7 years older than me, we have always had a pretty close relationship, and my younger brother and I are only 18 months apart. My dad is a pastor, so we grew up in a pretty religious household, which I still really value. I love my brothers and I love my parents. However, there are a ton of double standards, and I have recently been calling them out. For instance, my oldest brother and his now wife got pregnant before they got married. My parents, although really shocked, were thrilled and offered anything my brother may need to help their situation. My dad officiated their wedding like nothing was wrong. My other older brother bought a house with his girlfriend and they moved in together. They needed some help with a down payment, and my parents stepped in and gave them a few $1,000s to help them, with literally no strings attached. Now, when it comes to my younger brother, he is a straight up mess, which is his words, not mine. He has struggled in the past with drugs, self-hatred, and things that go along with that. He has been in and out of rehab and therapy, and has lived with almost every girlfriend he has ever had. My parents get upset, but hardly bat an eye. When it comes to me, I started dating the love of my life about a year ago. I was not a big dater in high school or college, so when things got serious with him, it was a huge deal. He and I have seriously talked about marriage and kids, and he is the first relationship I have actually felt comfortable in. And he and I have made the decision together to move in with each other about 6 months ago. We told his parents, our brothers, cousins, friends, and they are all extremely happy for us. But I had been avoiding telling my parents for obvious reasons. My mom and dad knew that I was moving, they just did not know where I was going. My mom came over to help me pack the other day, and out of nowhere she said to me, "Honey, I need to tell you that we love your boyfriend, but I am unhappy with your decision. It really grieves God." I said to her that I understand, but I'm an adult and I can make my own decisions. She said she understood that, but said that she needed to voice her opinion. She then said to me, "I want to do the mom thing and help you decorate and see the house, but I just can't under the circumstances." I then asked her if she really meant she would never come to my house, even if I personally invited her over. Well, she just looked at me and shrugged her shoulders, saying, "Well, who knows?" And honestly, that really hurt me. It almost feels like selective religiousness. I have been struggling with this for some time, even before the moving in part. I really want to sit down with my parents and ask them if this petty feud is worth a relationship with me and my boyfriend that they claim to love so much. Would I be the jerk if I asked them to try and compartmentalize their feelings like they did for my brothers? Because if they don't, I'm just gonna keep my distance. What should I do? I don't think the original poster is a jerk at all, and I don't think you would be a jerk for giving them some kind of insight into how you feel. First of all, straight up, yes, they are absolutely being hypocrites here. If they really believe what they believed, then they would have chewed out your brothers just like they're doing to you. And I'm not saying someone can't be religious and have their own standards, but if you're really gonna try and be like, "Oh yeah, God is grieving right now," then why did you only treat your daughter like this and not your 3 other sons? This seems very hypocritical, and honestly, it just isn't fair, because there very clearly is a double standard going on here. nightmare. And if I was in your shoes, I would not only have a talk with them, but I would absolutely point out exactly the way they're acting. An entitled Karen demands that I move from my airplane seat just so her husband can take my seat, despite the fact that I paid extra just to get this seat. But after dealing with similar situations so often in my life, I decided to put my foot down and stand up for myself, putting this entitled Karen and her husband back in their place. Here's what happened. So I was flying between Scandinavia and Western Europe. It was just a short 3-hour flight, and I booked it several months in advance and paid just a little bit extra for an aisle seat on an emergency row. I am 6 foot tall and I love me some legroom. I then sat down with this American Karen-like woman who was already in the window seat. It's a smaller plane, so the rows have 2 seats on each side of the aisle, and the woman was looking at me pretty hard, bordering right on the edge of an impolite stare. I gave her a polite smile in greeting and carried on minding my own business. You know, just like you would normally do on an airplane. She then continues to give me this appraising look, and not even 10 seconds later, she taps her husband on the shoulder who is sitting in the row in front of her and tells him very loudly, "Oh honey, why don't you just come sit over here next to me?" She then turns to me and says, "Do you mind?" I mean, she didn't even ask me. She just basically told me to switch seats. But I didn't miss a beat. I said to her, "As a matter of fact, I do mind. I paid extra for this seat and I'm not giving it up." Well, when I said that, she stared at me completely flabbergasted, but I did not break eye contact. We stared at each other a good while, whilst her husband was already standing next to my seat with his belongings, literally breathing down my neck and encroaching on my personal space. It was like being smothered by an entitlement sandwich, but I did not flinch. In the end, she turned her red, blotchy face to the window without saying another word, and her husband was chided back into his seat by a flight attendant. It seemed like she sized me up and thought I would fold, as I must have looked like a nice young woman. And trust me, the amount of issues this cliche has caused me throughout the years is exponential. It also kind of felt like this was one of the tricks that she probably played way more often than usual. But unluckily for her, my mama gave me a sturdy spine and a taste for confrontation. And next time, if they want to sit together, then maybe they should pay for their seats. Honestly, how entitled can you possibly get if you're gonna look at someone sitting next to you and be like, "Okay, it's time for you to move because my husband's gonna sit there instead." Like, that is crazy to me. Mostly because the original poster has it right. If they really wanted to sit together, they should have gotten those seats ahead of time. You don't just come after someone and be like, "Oh, you're gonna move so that we can sit together." That is just super rude, so it makes it even better when the original poster decides to stand up for themselves. Because if someone's gonna act this entitled, then they better expect to get some kind of confrontation. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for missing my niece's 18th birthday party simply because some of my children were being intentionally excluded? Because right now, my sister is angry at me, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, I want to start off by saying that my sister does not really like 2 of my children. They are 8 and 10 years old, they have autism, and they are high energy. But they are great kids. I don't just say that because they're mine. They are exceptional students, they excel in their musical and sport hobbies, and they are well liked by everyone. No one else in the family has any issue with them, and we recently attended a formal sit-down dinner and dance for my grandmother's 80th birthday, and we had no issues. When they were younger, I refused to set them up for failure and avoided fancy restaurants or other places not appropriate for high-energy kids. So we did miss my sister's 40th, as I had newly separated from my husband, had a newborn via C-section, and wasn't sure that I could cope with the kids in that setting, but was reliant on others to drive us there, so I couldn't just leave if I needed to. Plus, it was a per-head buffet, and would have been a waste to leave before eating, and I believe that she is still salty about that even 6 years later. Now, there will be other children at this party, around 20 of them, and they're all ranging from 11 years old down to newborn. My nieces invited me, and then my sister changed dates, so it's no longer on my kid-free weekend. She then contacted me saying, "You will have to get a babysitter for those 2. My other children, who are 19, 13, and 6 years old, they were invited. They are hiring a hall, cooking a barbecue dinner, having a local band play, so it is very family-friendly. Well, I've booked a holiday overseas instead for myself and the kids, and we will be there instead. I'll send the girls some cash as presents, and they are both moving to the city where I now live for university next year, so I'll help them move and fill their pantries as a housewarming gift, which I did for my oldest child as well. Well, my sister is now complaining that I'm going on holiday rather than going to her party. So am I the jerk for skipping out on this? What should I do? I
I personally don't think you're the jerk at all, because I think what your sister is doing is really rude. Like seriously, if she's gonna call up the original poster and be like, oh, the rest of your kids can be here, but those 2 other kids can't come along, then how on earth could you ever expect the original poster to honestly show up? Like that wouldn't be fair for the 8 and 10-year-old, regardless of how high energy they might be. Not to mention that it would just be super rude, and it's making this assumption that those kids really would be like out of control and ruin the night. But I'm sure that the original poster could find some kind of activity or something for them to do just so they could try and like pass the time while they're at this party. So no, you are definitely not the jerk. I think the way that your sister is acting is completely uncalled for, and honestly, if I was in your shoes, I would definitely not go to this party either, simply because of the way that she was acting. Am I the jerk for refusing to share my inheritance with my father's new child, as he is currently demanding this money right now, claiming that he needs it before this kid is born? Here's what happened. Okay, so for starters, my father is an only child. My grandmother and grandfather were kind of disappointed with how he chose to live his life after high school, as he wasted a bunch of his time and their money pursuing courses of study that he didn't have any real interest in. They made sure he graduated debt-free and then left him to his own devices. When he married my mom, they helped pay for the wedding and gave them the down payment for their home. My mom and dad then spent the next 20 years just goofing off. When I was born, I was pretty much given to my grandparents to raise. My maternal grandparents helped as much as they could, but they are back in Argentina. So I was basically raised as my dad's little brother and not as his kid. My grandparents came to my parent-teaching meetings. They attended my sporting events. I mean, seriously, they were my parents. My biological mother passed away when I was 12 years old, and I found out weeks later since my dad didn't bother telling anybody. When I was 25 years old, my grandparents got taken within 2 months of each other. My grandfather went last, and in his will, he left my dad $50. He left an animal rescue organization $50,000, and then he left the rest to me. They had already paid for my education, and I thanked them, and I was planning on paying them back once my career got going. But now I have a huge old house and a rather nice nest egg. I'm 35, and my fiance and I are about to start our own family. Well, my dad calls me out of the blue and says that he has remarried, which is news to me, and that his new wife is expecting. And I congratulated him, not really knowing what else to do from there. He said that obviously my grandparents would want their grandchildren to share equally in their estate. He said I need to talk to the lawyers and see about setting up a trust fund for this new kid and any future kids down the line. But I said that I was not splitting my inheritance and that it was his job as a parent to provide for his children. He tried saying that his parents hadn't provided for him, but I asked him about his debt from 7 years of university. I asked about the money for his wedding and about his mortgage. I asked him to please provide me with information about how much he paid towards my education, how much he helped me when I bought my first home, what he gave me towards my own wedding. Well, he said that he didn't have the kind of money that his parents had. I asked him how much he earned at his job, and he said that he worked to live and not live to work. And that was always something that he said to my grandfather, so it really hit home with me. He has spent his entire life on easy mode. I told him that if he is a competent father and his new kids finish high school, I will happily help them get an education. But he said that he needs the money right now. So I asked him why my unborn half-sibling needed money, but it turns out my dad hasn't been paying his taxes. I offered to buy his house and rent it back to him, but he said I was being a jerk like his dad and trying to control him with money. My wife is with me, but she thinks I was harsh and that his kid deserves a leg up. So honestly, am I the jerk in this scenario? What should I do? Yeah, it really sounds like your dad was kind of a deadbeat while you were growing up. Like he did not provide for you at all, and instead basically dropped you off at your grandparents' house and said, okay, have fun. And that's really unfair to you. Also, you know what? If your grandparents wanted to leave your dad anything, they would have given him much more than just $50. And for the record, they've already given him so much money. They gave him money for his mortgage and his university studies and all this other money for his wedding, and he just blew it all down the drain. And the fact that he was lazy early in life is not your fault at all. This guy wasted away his inheritance, and he literally only has himself to blame. So in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk for refusing to share your inheritance, because it sounds like your father is not going to use that money for his kids at all, but instead he's going to try and use that only for himself. An entitled passenger ruins my flight experience as he screams and cries about how bad the customer service is. And after dealing with this for several hours, once I finally got off the airplane, I gave this guy a piece of my mind in a way that I honestly never thought I was capable of doing. Here's what happened. So I was returning home from a trip that I cut short due to a family health emergency. The flight was pleasant, but I was in a bad place mentally. I did what I usually do
do in circumstances like that, and I just kept to myself, saying just a few words. I plugged in my headphones and I started to listen to some podcasts during the 2-hour flight. Over the sound of the podcast, I heard someone speaking loudly in a pretentious, nasally voice. I pulled out my earbuds and I heard a guy arguing with a flight attendant about how he had asked for something several times but didn't get it. Now, I didn't really care and I tried to ignore him, but he just kept going, asking the flight attendant for her name and telling her that the airline company must hear about it. I don't really remember what he wanted, but it was some kind of drink that they didn't have available for some kind of reason. I returned to my podcast and I raised the volume. 10 minutes later, according to the podcast timer, and he was still ranting in this annoyingly pretentious way about professionalism, as well as respect and giving customers what they want. I then switched to some rock music to drown him out, and I saw the captain coming over to talk to him. I mean, he was flailing his arms around like spaghetti. My worry about my hospitalized grandmother gave way to anger, and I started fantasizing about all the ways I would shut him up. The captain walked over with a frustrated look on his face, and the flight attendant started serving the other passengers and ignoring his attempts to stir up trouble. I think they got him some alternative drink, which he never even touched. Eventually, we landed, and I put my earbuds away to get ready to leave. He was the first in line by the airplane door, and I was right behind him. The door opened, and an airport security guard was standing there to escort him through the tube. I followed behind, and by the end of the tube, a high-ranking guard was waiting for him. He stood blocking the way out, and I saw that other passengers behind me were also fed up with this guy who never shut up for more than half of the flight. He was arguing about how terrible the crew and the service was, and how he had never had service this bad before. He kept saying he needs to leave now because his family was waiting for him, or some other reason. At this point, my anger was starting to boil. I thought to myself, should I shove him? Should I bang my pulling bag onto his leg? Should I punch him in the back? Would everybody start clapping? I had to head straight to the hospital, and everyone behind me had places to go. I've heard many stories about people like him online. I mean, nobody would feel bad for them, but this wasn't only about them. It was also about who I am and what kind of person I want to be. I took a couple of breaths to calm down as he was telling the guards how to do their jobs, and with the most aggressive tone I could possibly come up with, despite my stress and exhaustion, I finally spoke up. I said to him, "Get the F out of my way." Now, that F-bomb, which was definitely an F-bomb, was more than enough to stun him, since everyone else was following a code of conduct required by their jobs. And for the first time since I noticed him, he had nothing to say. Well, the guards took advantage of his silence and started to move him away, hopefully to get him to some back office where he will be delayed for a few hours. I left the airport and headed home for a quick shower and a change of clothes before going to the hospital. My thoughts kept going back to the entitled guy and how he thought he could be a pretentious and rude guy with people whose jobs require them to be polite. Politeness never works with them, and sometimes meeting someone who thinks they're scum is the wake-up call that they deserve. Honestly, good for you for the way you handled that. This guy ruined the flight experience for everybody involved, and you are 100% right. Everybody who worked on that plane probably really tried to be as professional as possible, but this guy clearly, from the sounds of it, was not going to have any of that. And I think you're 100% right as well. Being polite to people like this doesn't always work, and sometimes for entitled people like this, it sometimes is helpful to remind them that yes, you are the problem, because this guy's attitude was completely inappropriate, and I think the way you handled this was absolutely amazing. Am I the jerk for wanting to kick my brother and his family out of my house after they've been a nightmare house guest for several weeks now? Because right now they are very upset that I'm asking them to leave, and at this point I don't know what to do. Okay, so my brother by the name of Ellis, that's not his real name, recently got a job in my city that required an immediate start. We didn't have the time or money to find a place on such short notice, and his partner by the name of Taylor, also not her real name, just had a baby 7 months ago, so he didn't want her to be alone. He asked if they could stay at my place for a couple of months just so they could get situated. Now, Ellis is a responsible guy who doesn't take advantage of people, so I felt okay saying yes. So as a result, Ellis, Taylor, their 7-month-old baby, and Taylor's daughter all moved in. Before they came, I made it clear that I would not tolerate them doing any sleep training or any of this just cry it out stuff with the baby. If the baby cries, you need to make an immediate and reasonable effort to soothe him. The other rule was that Taylor was responsible for any damage her daughter did in the house. And as a note, you would think this would be obvious, but we've had previous incidents. The final rule was this: neither I nor my husband would be doing any childcare. I am a stay-at-home mom with my own daughter, as well as having a side business, and my husband works very hard, so just because we are home, it doesn't mean that we're available for childcare. Now, I thought it went without saying that they would be responsible for themselves in all other ways. They accepted all the conditions and then they moved in. And it took about 2 weeks for it all to go downhill. There were times I'd have to get up in the night to wake Taylor and Ellis up just to get the baby. Taylor's daughter has also not adjusted well to the move and is constantly playing sick to avoid going to school. Then, because she's not really sick, she spends the day causing havoc. Taylor has been bugging me to help her with the kids, despite agreeing that she wouldn't do this. She's also been expecting that she and her kids would be cooked and cleaned for. So it was 2 weeks until I was getting very annoyed, and a further 2 weeks of me being on the edge. What tipped it over was earlier this week. I was picking my daughter up early from school and going out, and Taylor asked me to take her daughter with me. She said she was drowning in things to do, and the baby was fussing and she just needed a break. But I said to her no. Taylor then swore at me and just left. When we got back a few hours later, the first thing I hear is the baby crying. I go into the nursery and Taylor is nowhere to be found. Her daughter is sitting on the couch watching TV and crying, and Taylor is nowhere to be found. Also, my kitchen is a mess, and this is also Taylor's doing. I frantically searched the whole house, only to find Taylor locked in a closet. She said she couldn't take it and she just needed a break. So I call up Ellis and I tell him to get home right now. I sat them down and I said that they had to go. I said I would chip in for a hotel, but I can't do this anymore. Ellis thinks that I'm being a jerk for going back on the deal, but he and Taylor have not held up their end. I do feel bad because I don't want to stress Ellis out with his new job, but I am going crazy. I hate being in my own home right now. So honestly, am I the jerk for putting my foot down? Because at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. No, in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk at all. Like, I think you're getting it right. They clearly have not held up their end of the bargain, and they haven't done anything to improve that living situation in the slightest. Like, they literally went back on everything that you guys agreed upon. They're letting the baby cry at night, they're leaving the house in complete disrepair and just making a mess of everything, and they're begging you for childcare. Like, that's all the things that you guys agreed upon, and they're just completely ignoring it. So for Ellis to be like, wow, you're going back on your deal, it's like, what are you talking about? You never kept any of your deal. Like, you and your wife have gone out of your way to literally make this a miserable experience for everybody involved. Why should the original poster have to hold up anything towards you guys when she'd let you in her home in the first place under the pretense that you guys would be a good guest in her house? Like, seriously, they set up rules in the beginning and you guys are just completely disobeying them. So honestly, I think you're completely justified for kicking them out, because I know if I was in your shoes, I would definitely be doing the same thing. Am I the jerk for turning off my location tracking from my mom after I found out that she's been using that to track my every move? Because right now, I'm seriously upset, and at this point, I don't know what to do. Okay, so I'm a 28-year-old female and I have a good relationship with my mom and dad, but honestly, they struggle with boundaries. I live in a city and my parents live about 2 hours away. We have Apple Family, and as such, we have the Find My Phone application. My parents are rubbish with tech, but my dad can use the app, and I know he uses it when I drive to their house. Thursday night, I was out for drinks and I stayed at my friend's house. My usual train line stops after 12 o'clock p.m. and adds a 15-minute walk to my flat. Sometimes I call my mom when walking as she's up late and she's happy to chat. Well, Friday, I wake up hungover at my friend's house. At about 12:30 p.m., I see 2 text messages from my mom and 2 missed phone calls from my dad asking if I had a good time the night before and to let them know I was okay. Now, clearly, one of them or both of them has looked where I was the night before and then looked again to see where I was on the Friday morning, and they saw that I wasn't at my flat or the office. I replied by saying that I was fine, but also asked them to please stop tracking me. I then removed my location from the app, and she asked me to add her back, and I said no. And we honestly didn't speak after that. The week after, I drove to my parents' place, and my mom was really moody. So I confronted her, and I said I felt they invaded my privacy, and that they had crossed a boundary. They shouldn't be looking at where I am and whose flat I'm staying at. Well, she didn't agree with that, and said that she only looked because she was watching a lot of TV about crime in my city, and I didn't ring her the night before or even text her until midday Friday. She then said that she wasn't angry at me anymore, and it was better that I didn't share my location as she couldn't do anything 2 hours away anyways. We got into more of an argument, we all went to bed, and the following morning she was sulking with passive-aggressive comments and only giving me one-word answers. So I decided to drive back to the city without saying goodbye, which I know is probably childish, but I was angry. I just couldn't bring myself to apologize or make the first move when I felt I hadn't done done anything wrong. It's now been about 3 weeks and we haven't spoken, and this is the longest we have gone without reconciling. My mom is a massive grudge holder, and usually we have to grovel and apologize to reconcile with her, even if we haven't done anything wrong. She's good at being able to flip the narrative of an argument, so if she has to apologize, you do too, just so she can feel like we're both in the wrong. Now, I do not want to grovel to her first for the sake of peace, all because her feelings are hurt, which is what I usually do anyways. My brother wants to stay out of it, but agrees with me. She has been standoffish with him since I tried to justify her actions to him. She also said to him that I had really hurt her and that she was upset. Now, I didn't realize that they had been regularly looking at my location, as is not something that I would even think to do or need to set a boundary on. I am struggling to see if I am totally justified in still being angry, or if I'm the jerk for hurting her feelings, because at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Honestly, I don't think you're in the wrong for being upset about this, because it really does seem like they were tracking you. Like they were watching your every move and they're checking where you are and where you're not at. Like that's kind of sketchy to me, especially with the fact that you're 28 years old. Like you are well into adulthood. There's no reason for them to be tracking your location all the time. So no, I don't think you're the jerk, and I think you are completely justified for being upset in the way that you were. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, make sure to subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.